Chapter 1883. By the time the immortal palace appeared, the huge eye in the sky had already become very small. The eye of the heavenly path was supposed to patrol for the heavens. There was a problem with the yin-yang heaven before, and there was a power here that deviated from the heavenly path, so the eye of the heavenly path had been monitoring and suppressing this place. Now, the 7 soul realms of the ideal palace collapsed one by one. The river of time that had been cut off returned to the endless flow of time. The eye of the heavenly path was about to disappear. When the divine palace appeared, Han Fei no longer controlled the dispersal of energy and spiritual energy above the divine palace. At that moment, the energy storm emitted by the yin-yang palace swept the entire 1,000-star city in an instant. It was because the yin-yang fairy palace had accumulated too much power for too long. At this moment, it was like a leaking ball, bursting out at an incredible speed. Han Fei knew that he had to use these powers as soon as possible. Although they were dissipating at a terrifying speed, he had seen Xue Fan's tribulation transcendence. Han Fei felt that the energy and spiritual energy stored in the yin-yang palace should be enough for him to transcend the tribulation. In the 1,000-star city, countless people shouted, "Marshal Han is invincible. Transcend the tribulation and become a king." Han Fei has already reached this point, but he still hasn't transcended the tribulation and become a king? King. There may be a king in the yin-yang heaven. For tens of thousands of years, there has never been a king in the yin-yang heaven. Is this curse going to be broken? On the pure sun island, Su Yang cried and shouted, "Ancestor, do you see that? You won the bet. Han Fei is going to be a king." In the Heavenly Sword sect, the Heavenly Sword Master sighed. Sure enough, from this kid's understanding of the Sword Tao, who in this world can stop him? Li Tianxian murmured, "The palace has appeared. As long as he succeeds in opening the sea, the Pure Sun sect will rise again." Zhang Xuanyu said, "The so-called heavenly talents are a bit dim in front of Han Fei." Luo Xiaobai said, "Don't belittle yourself. Think about it. Who can become a venerable at this age? There is still time in the future. We should try our best to catch up with him." Xia Shaochan said, "Xiao Bai is right. It's not that you can't do it, but you lack opportunities. Those who could cultivate to the supremacy realm in the yin-yang heaven were rare in the chaotic azure ocean. If you were born in the chaotic azure sea, you would at least be a high-rank venerable by now." Standing next to Jiang Qin, old Jiang said leisurely, "I knew that this kid might have a bright future. However, I didn't expect him to be able to expand his sea in just a few decades. I still remember how naughty he was when he first became a spirit gatherer." Jiang Qin rolled her eyes at old Jiang and said, "Don't be so smug." I don't know who has been repeatedly amazed by him. Old Jiang was speechless. Can I amaze him? Apart from being able to see the outline of the immortal palace at the beginning, the immortal palace had descended into the world. But in the blink of an eye, the immortal palace was enveloped by surging energy. Suddenly, someone exclaimed, "Look, the immortal palace is releasing energy." Hiss. What was General Han trying to do? Didn't he say he was going to break through to the monarch realm? How is he going to pass the tribulation if the energy is dispersed? Someone sneered, "What do you know? General Han is going to pass the tribulation. How can he not know the danger of the tribulation? Since he can disperse it, it means that he is not afraid of the energy dissipating." Someone wondered, "I wonder if the immortal palace can descend to show us." Someone was speechless. Look at your head. Do you see the energy surges of the 9 heavens? To put it bluntly, you can't even resist the impact of the energy. Do you still want to see it? In the 7 major sects, the presidents and teachers shouted, "All disciples, hurry up if you want to make a breakthrough. The immortal palace has descended. The spiritual energy is like waves and the energy is like tides. If you make a breakthrough now, you will get twice the result with half the effort." At this moment, hundreds of thousands of people in the 1,000-star city were sitting cross-legged to make a breakthrough. And the number of people was still increasing. As for the immortal palace, it was like a red phoenix spreading its wings, hovering in the sky, dazzling but unapproachable. And at this moment, the steps into the sea in the level 3 fishery moved. In the 1,000-star testing field, a few streaks of light rose from the ground with a swoosh, as if a murderous aura was soaring into the sky. Chirp, some red lights with murderous intent rushed towards the immortal palace. The Emperor Sparrow, Little Fatty, Nine-tailed Mantis Shrimp, Simp, and Little Gold leaped into the air and flew straight towards the immortal palace. Above the immortal palace, Han Fei didn't care about the return of the Emperor Sparrow and the others. All of them directly disappeared into the center of his eyebrows, including the Emperor Sparrow. After all, this was the Great Tribulation of the Sea Expansion Realm, a real king's tribulation. Even the Emperor Sparrow, with his extraordinary bloodline, couldn't face the king's tribulation in his current realm. Therefore, Han Fei knew that he could only rely on himself for this tribulation. Even if Little Black, Little White, and the Emperor Sparrow could share some of the power of the lightning tribulation, it was only a little at most. Han Fei said, "Tribulation is coming." How terrifying was the king's tribulation! In addition to the 1,000-star city, the 36 towns, and the scattered stars island all saw a red star appear in the sky in the daytime. Accompanied by the star, a dragon roar sounded. It was Han Fei's shout. "Tribulation is coming," hum on the scattered stars island. Everyone spontaneously stopped what they were doing and looked up. Although they couldn't see anything clearly, they could see that a huge halo had formed around the red nebula. How far away was it? Perhaps it was millions of miles away. It was also clearly visible. When tribulation clouds began to gather over the boundless sky of the 1,000-star city, it was as if the end of the world had come. The sky was covered by black clouds, and the day turned into night. The brightest thing in the night was the red light spot in the sky and the halo around it. Even Ren Tianfei looked shocked. This tribulation is extraordinary. It covers a range of tens of thousands of kilometers, and the tribulation clouds are still condensing. I wonder what countermeasures he has prepared. At this moment, Han Fei stood proudly in the sky 100 kilometers above the immortal palace. The old turtle said, "Remember, the king's tribulation has 9 levels. If you can't bear it, don't resist it. You'd better prepare your vitality-type spirit fruits. Don't waste the heavenly awakening divine technique." Han Fei asked, "Old Yuan, how do I use the chaotic qi? You've helped me accumulate so much. I have to know how to expand my sea, right?" The old turtle said, "I don't need to teach you. The heavenly tribulation you experience will tell you. You'll understand when and how you'll do it. Everyone's situation is different. So, I can't explain it to you now. You can only comprehend it in the heavenly tribulation. Even if you can't expand your origin sea well during the heavenly tribulation, you can make up for it later. Surviving the heavenly tribulation is the most important thing. I'm going to concentrate. Otherwise, a bolt of lightning will kill me." Damn, Han Fei took a deep breath and looked at the dim but surging tide of the heavenly tribulation. He was nervous. After all, this was the first heavenly tribulation. After the heavenly tribulation, he would become a king. Old Han's years of planning, his years of pursuit, and countless people's years of expectations were about to come. After more than 10 minutes, thunder was already rolling in the sky. However, the rolling thunderbolts were clearly purplish-red in color. "Hiss," Tang Yen said, "he won't start with a purple heavenly tribulation, will he?" Ren Tianfei shook his head. "I don't think so. Those purple heavenly tribulations are gathering. If he starts with a purple heavenly tribulation, it will be ridiculous. Who can resist it?" After all, Ren Tianfei had once reached the king realm. At that time, he didn't turn purple until the last bolt of lightning. So, he had an estimate in his heart. On the other side, Luo Xiaobai held Xia Xiaochan's hand and said, "It's okay. Relax. You know this guy. It's just a heavenly tribulation. It won't be difficult for him." Lu Renquang wiped the sweat off his head, swallowed, and said, "Nothing must happen to him. I believe in Han Fei's physique. As long as he doesn't resist the 9 heavenly tribulations, he will be fine." Zhang Xuanyu looked solemn and nodded heavily. Yin clasped her fists. However, her eyes were extremely firm. She seemed to remember something in the Age of Doom. At this moment, she just gritted her teeth and firmly believed that Han Fei could survive this heavenly tribulation. Boom! Just as everyone was feeling apprehensive, they saw hundreds of lightning bolts descend from the sky. Among them, the thickest one fell on Han Fei. In the sky, Han Fei's power burst out and the pure mystic body was activated. Heavenly tribulation was a test of the heavenly Tao. If one wanted to be an invincible person, he had to bear the heavenly tribulation that no one could bear. This was a very simple truth. In the 100-meter-long lightning pillar, Han Fei's battle suit was instantly turned into powder. But Han Fei was not afraid at all. Every pore on his body surface was crazily devouring the power of the heavenly tribulation. From the moment he started the heavenly tribulation, it meant that Han Fei's bottleneck had been broken. The reason why some people could become pseudo-kings was that they failed halfway through the heavenly tribulation. And at this moment, Han Fei's whole body was full of blood, and he was pressed down by the lightning for more than 100 kilometers. On the surface of his body, there were many scorched bruises, and his fur was overflowing with blood. His 5 internal organs were all surging with lightning. Huff! Han Fei withstood the first bolt of lightning, but the expression on his face was not very good. It was not that he hadn't passed the heavenly tribulation of a king, but his heavenly tribulation seemed to be terrifyingly strong. At that time, Xue Fan's first heavenly tribulation was much weaker than this. In the chaotic ocean, his strength had doubled, and his physique and bloodline had improved by several levels. When he withstood the first bolt of lightning, Han Fei was still slightly injured. It could be seen how powerful this heavenly tribulation was. Han Fei couldn't imagine. If the first bolt was this powerful, what about the rest? Chapter 1884. After experiencing the first heavenly tribulation, Han Fei didn't feel the enlightenment that the old turtle said. Han Fei only knew that from the moment he passed the heavenly tribulation, his potential seemed to be growing. This was a wonderful feeling in his heart. At this time, Han Fei's body was like a river that was constantly being opened. Although the speed of opening was very fast, the speed of filling energy was also very fast. A holy light technique descended, and before Han Fei's minor injuries were healed, he saw the second heavenly tribulation falling. However, to everyone's surprise, Han Fei's second heavenly tribulation was a mixture of 2 colors, and there was already a lavender color in the heavenly tribulation. What? The second heavenly tribulation is already purple? Not good. This heavenly tribulation is more powerful than I thought. What a terrifying heavenly tribulation. It's so far away, but I can still feel its power. Han Fei had expected that something was wrong at that time. Suddenly, Han Fei roared, and the pure mystic body twisted frantically. 10,000 spirit fruits appeared around him, and they instantly crumbled into pieces. Han Fei opened his mouth and sucked, and the energy of the spiritual fruits all entered his body. Han Fei's bloodline was constantly growing, and his whole body rose 500 kilometers with a swish, facing the heavenly tribulation. Rumble, the blood energy that Han Fei condensed into the sky didn't even hold for half a minute and was smashed into pieces. The heavenly tribulation enveloped Han Fei. The pure mystic body directly stirred the violent power of the heavenly tribulation into a vortex. After a full 5 minutes, Han Fei retreated 300 kilometers and barely resisted this heavenly tribulation. Although Han Fei blocked this heavenly tribulation, there was a crackling sound of thunder on his body. Han Fei bled from his 7 apertures and instantly scabbed. A small portion of his outer skin had been destroyed during this tribulation. When the heavenly awakening divine technique descended, Han Fei's body quickly recovered completely. However, this terrifying heavenly tribulation still shocked Han Fei. Han Fei thought that he had seen the heavenly tribulation, so he was already prepared to resist the heavenly tribulation head-on this time, trying to strengthen his body throughout the heavenly tribulation. However, Han Fei didn't expect that his heavenly tribulation would be so terrifying. This level was almost on par with the power of Xue Fan's 6th tribulation. But fortunately, Han Fei was no longer shaken by this kind of heavenly tribulation. Unless the level of the third heavenly tribulation could directly soar to the level of Xue Fan's ninth heavenly tribulation. Otherwise, he could still take it head-on. Sizzle, the lightning in the sky was like a dragon, surging and shaking. In the thousand-star city, hundreds of millions of people looked solemn and shocked. Many people had doubts in their hearts. Can this thing really be blocked by human strength? Boom, the third heavenly tribulation had almost turned into a pure purple color. Han Fei had almost gone crazy. He rose to the sky again and roared, "What can you do to me?" At that moment, the spiritual fruits turned into a sky full of red clouds and followed Han Fei closely like rain. Han Fei, on the other hand, opened his arms, and golden light surged from his body as he embraced the heavenly tribulation. Sizzle, 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 boom, boom, boom. At this moment, Han Fei had been covered by the purple light. The tide of energy of the spiritual fruit had been drained by Han Fei. However, when the third lightning tribulation passed, Ren Tianfei, Xia Shaochan, and the others were shocked to see that some fine cracks appeared on Han Fei's body. Although these cracks were not deep, this was only the third fucking heavenly tribulation. Tang Yan was horrified. He himself had passed the king tribulation. To put it bluntly, Han Fei's heavenly tribulation was already as strong as the 8 lightning tribulations that killed him. Tang Yan's face was solemn. How strong is Han Fei? How could he attract such a terrifying king tribulation? And Chao Tianji was even more shocked. He hadn't even passed the heavenly tribulation. Seeing Han Fei's heavenly tribulation this time, he was wondering if he could resist such a heavenly tribulation. For example, he didn't think he could withstand the heavenly tribulation just now. Zhang Xuanyu's face changed. Shaochan, can your body take it? Xia Shaochan nodded heavily. Yes. Lu Renhuang let out a long sigh of relief. That's good. My scalp is freezing. However, Xia Shaochan was also worried. Although she knew that Han Fei had great potential and there was no reason why he couldn't pass the king tribulation since he could even obtain the supreme inheritance of the martial emperor city, she still couldn't help but worry. At this time, 2 women had appeared in this place. Zhou Yinling stood on the roof where her home used to be. He Xiaoyu stood among thousands of people. At this moment, she clenched her fists and watched this scene. Jing stood in the Sea Cloud Tower, watching the heavenly tribulation. The heavenly sword sect. Tang Gu and Mu Ling stood on the hidden sword pavilion. Mu Ling comforted him, he is no longer the Han Fei of the past. You should trust him. Tang Gu nodded. I know. I trust him. The heavenly awakening divine technique came again. However, Han Fei's injuries hadn't fully recovered yet. The 4th lightning came. This time, there was no shadow of the ordinary lightning at all. The lavender lightning seemed to crack the sky. Rumble, this time, Han Fei's face changed greatly. When he found that the power of the spiritual fruits around him was not enough to repair his vitality, he immediately roared. A total of 11 dragon blood fruits were all shattered. The dragon blood fruit was originally a fruit for body strengthening, but at a critical moment, it could also promote the body's absorption of energy. Although Han Fei's strength was rapidly increasing, the speed of his body's absorption was far slower than the destruction caused by the lightning bombardment. Therefore, Han Fei had to use some kind of power to block the heavenly tribulation, replenish his vitality, or speed up the absorption of energy. Although ordinary spiritual fruits were effective, they were far from enough in terms of speed. But the dragon blood fruit was enough. Of course, he couldn't just use the dragon blood fruit. Han Fei still had some earth vein spring water that he hadn't used yet. At this moment, with a splash, they all poured out. Infinite vitality directly enveloped Han Fei. When the 4th lightning dissipated, some of the power of the earth vein spring water still remained in the void. Of course, Han Fei was still injured. At the moment when the heavenly tribulation dissipated, Han Fei smashed down with a heavenly awakening divine technique. While using the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique, he absorbed the power of the earth vein spring water. In less than 2 seconds, Han Fei finally caught his breath. At this moment, Han Fei's injuries were completely recovered. The earth vein spring water was also completely absorbed by Han Fei. Of course, Han Fei knew that he had to continue to bear the power of the heavenly tribulation head-on. Maybe he had to start using the important resources he had. All of a sudden, Han Fei sensed that the chaotic energy in his body began to move. The chaotic energy began to entangle, as if it were trying to open a mysterious door. Han Fei couldn't help but think of what the old turtle said. He said that he would know how to expand the sea when he went through the heavenly tribulation. Now, the chaotic energy moved on its own and was moving to his dantian. And in his dantian was his Tao seed. Even now, Han Fei still didn't know how to expand the sea. However, it didn't matter. The next heavenly tribulation was coming. It was more important to pass the heavenly tribulation first. This time, Han Fei took out more than 30,000 spiritual fruits again. At the same time, he also took out a large amount of demonic chi essence to replenish his vitality. Boom! When the fifth heavenly tribulation arrived, the light purple lightning had begun to turn purple. Above the sky, there was crimson. When the spiritual fruits and the demonic chi essence were all annihilated by the heavenly tribulation, Han Fei suddenly felt that the chaotic energy suddenly drilled into the Tao seed. His mind was suddenly separated. Han Fei seemed to see a barren land. This was a barren land only about 100 meters in size. However, after the chaotic energy poured in, this barren land was opening up. The land seemed to become fertile. Some water seeped out of the barren land. Han Fei thought to himself, is this the so-called origin sea? Isn't it too small? The speed of the chaotic energy entering was not fast. On average, only 2 or 3 strands could enter in one breath. According to this speed, when the heavenly tribulation was over, he wouldn't be able to stuff all the chaotic energy into the origin sea. However, Han Fei had another feeling. He seemed to be able to open up this space. When going through the heavenly tribulation, he could multitask. So, part of Han Fei's mind was immersed in this barren land, and the other half was resisting the heavenly tribulation. Crack, crack, crack. After about 2 minutes, Han Fei found that the vitality brought by the power of the spiritual fruits and the essence of demonic chi had basically been consumed. With a thought, Han Fei took out the heavenly false star fruit. This was the treasure he robbed in the Grand Purity Palace. The heavenly false star fruit also contained 30 strands of chaotic energy. After taking it, there was a certain chance that the bloodline power in his body would be activated. However, Han Fei's bloodline was not activated, but it was triggered by the heavenly false star fruit. It was a pity that although this fruit was powerful, it only worked for about half a minute. Its overall strength was completely depleted. And after half a minute, Han Fei's body cracked. Golden blood was disintegrating and dissipating. At this point, the fifth heavenly tribulation was past. Han Fei smiled bitterly and found that there were only 5 heavenly tribulations. Out of the hundreds of thousands of spiritual fruits he had collected, there were now less than 50,000 left. These 50,000 spiritual fruits could only be consumed at one time during the 6th heavenly tribulation. The apocalyptic divine technique descended at all costs, and the cracks on Han Fei's body were healing rapidly. Golden blood intertwined in the void and flowed backward. After transcending this heavenly tribulation, Han Fei suddenly found that the speed of the chaotic energy flowing into the origin sea he had created was twice as fast. If only 3 strands of chaotic energy could drill into it in 1 minute. Now, 6 strands of chaotic energy could drill into it in 1 minute. However, even so, it was still too slow. Han Fei saw that the origin sea was expanding, but at a shocking speed. It could only open up a few dozen meters in 1 minute. Damn, who are you kidding? Everyone else's origin sea is thousands of kilometers long. My origin sea is only a few hundred meters long. Are you kidding me? Han Fei thought to himself, the degree of the heavenly tribulation should be directly related to the speed of the origin sea's expansion. Of course, in addition to the automatic expansion of the origin sea, the other half of Han Fei's divine sense moved. Grabbing a strand of chaotic energy that spilled in, Han Fei roared and slashed at the boundless black fog that wrapped the origin sea. The black fog was cut out to a radius of 1,000 meters. Not bad. Chapter 1885. Han Fei seemed to have found a way to open up the origin sea. However, his method seemed a bit clumsy. The opening of the origin sea reminded Han Fei of the expansion of Forge the Universe. The opening of the two seemed to be the same. However, one was based on the demon purification pot, and the other was based on his own Tao seed. But the origin sea was not the demon purification pot after all, so Han Fei could only try his best to open it bit by bit. At this moment, the sixth heavenly tribulation was about to arrive. Although the healing speed of the Apocalypse divine technique was fast, it couldn't heal Han Fei's seriously injured body in just a few seconds. Therefore, Han Fei released all the spiritual fruits in advance. These were all the resources that Han Fei had accumulated in the chaotic ocean. It would be good if he could resist the sixth heavenly tribulation with these resources. After all, while resisting the heavenly tribulation, the energy of these energy fruits and the energy of the heavenly tribulation were almost all absorbed by him. The heavenly tribulation was both a tribulation and a way to grow on the way to becoming a king. Han Fei knew that the vitality and gentle energy provided by 50,000 spiritual fruits were not enough. Therefore, Han Fei couldn't help but hold a small bottle in his hand. Crack! As Han Fei crushed it, the small bottle broke. A pill engraved with 3 Taoist patterns appeared in Han Fei's hand. Who was the best alchemist here? Old Jiang was the best. However, when he saw the pill in Han Fei's hand, he couldn't help but be surprised. Is that a tribulation pill? A tribulation pill that has gone through the heavenly tribulation? Xia Shaochang clenched her fists nervously. At this moment, she tried to calm herself down and said, a Tao pattern pill with 3 Tao patterns has gone through 3 heavenly tribulations. However, I don't know if he can withstand such a powerful heavenly tribulation. Lu Renquang nodded. Surrounded by spiritual fruits and this tribulation pill, he should be able to resist it, right? Zhang Xuanyu sighed. This king tribulation is too terrifying. How many spiritual fruits has Han Fei prepared for this heavenly tribulation? Ren Tianfei said, he just chose to resist it head-on. If he hadn't, he wouldn't have had to consume so many resources. Resist it head-on. Everyone couldn't help but look at Ren Tianfei, puzzled. This was also what they didn't understand. Was it really better to resist the tribulation with the help of tools? Ren Tianfei said, the heavenly tribulation is the purest killing force in the world. It represents the heavenly Tao. Similarly, because the heavenly tribulation was extremely pure, it also contained an enormous amount of power. Every time a heavenly tribulation descended, any part of it absorbed by the body would transform the body of the person undergoing the tribulation. And the more heavenly tribulation your body absorbs, the more power and potential you'll have after becoming a king, the more powerful you'll be compared to a king who uses artifacts to block the heavenly tribulation. Zhang Xuanyu asked, doesn't that mean whoever has a stronger physique will be stronger after the king tribulation? In the future, they will be far ahead of those who don't transcend the tribulation with their bodies? Ren Tianfei shook his head. No, you can't say that. Transcending the tribulation with one's physical body could only make one stronger than others after transcending the tribulation and becoming a king. However, becoming a king was an upgrade of one's level of existence and bloodline. Bloodline and life level were the foundation. If one's foundation was not as good as others, then even if one's physical body underwent tribulation, others would still catch up to them in the future. This is potential. Oh, even Tang Yan and Ren Tianfei didn't quite understand what Ren Tianfei said. Although they had guessed it in their hearts, they were not kings after all. Therefore, they couldn't understand the difference between kings at all. At this moment, after being pointed out by Ren Tianfei, they finally understood. Luo Xiaobai said, he has already resisted the 6th heavenly tribulation with his body. Is he going to endure the whole tribulation? Hearing Luo Xiaobai's words, everyone fell silent. According to Han Fei's personality, it was very likely. Rumble, while they were communicating quickly, countless purple lightning veins descended. The thickest one was completely purple lightning. Even this, tens of thousands of kilometers away, was also covered by black clouds. Within 100,000 kilometers, above the sky, there was a gust of wind and lightning intertwined. It seemed that the quality of the lightning was getting stronger and stronger. Perhaps there was another reason. The power of the heavenly tribulation of the yin-yang heaven was not enough, so it covered a wide range and needed to absorb power from a larger range. Therefore, when Han Fei transcended the tribulation, the noise was particularly big. 3 tribulation pills entered his body. In an instant, Han Fei's body was filled with the power bursting out of the pills. This power overflowed crazily from his body, helping Han Fei's body to resist the heavenly tribulation. Of course, energy was not the key. The triple Tao pattern pill was a pill that had experienced the heavenly tribulation. Therefore, swallowing it at this time could give Han Fei a lot of power of the great path in a short period of time. Although this was not his own great path, it was just a manifestation of the Tao of heaven and earth. But even so, it stimulated Han Fei's body to the most resilient state in an instant. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. At the 3rd second, the power provided by all the spiritual fruits was exhausted by Han Fei. At the moment when the vitality provided by the spiritual fruits completely disappeared, in the heavenly tribulation, Han Fei shouted, "Heavenly awakening divine technique." This time, Han Fei couldn't care less. He used the 1,000-year vitality on himself. Together with the triple Tao pattern pill, he protected his body and forcibly persisted in the heavenly tribulation. When the 6th heavenly tribulation dissipated, Han Fei panted and cursed, "Son of a bitch," it completely surpassed Xue Fan's 9th heavenly tribulation. God, are you kidding me? Han Fei recovered from his wounds, only to discover that the amount of chaotic energy that could crawl into his origin sea doubled every second. Now, about 12 breaths of chaos energy could enter the origin sea with every breath. Han Fei sensed the world in the origin sea, and half of his mind was trying to quickly expand this place. However, Han Fei found that no matter how fast he expanded, it was impossible for him to expand thousands of kilometers at once. Back then, when the water immortal became a king, he didn't expand so little. The divine sun expanded even more. It shouldn't be. I have passed the first 6 heavenly tribulations, so I should already know how to expand the sea. When the chaotic energy enters the origin sea, it melts here in an instant, so I can't intervene. Does that mean my mind can only slash out a few hundred miles? Suddenly, Han Fei's heart did a flip. He saw a small vine sticking out of the top of his head. This little vine was trying its best to burrow into his origin sea. Around the small vine, Han Fei also saw the buds of several other small vines, which seemed to be struggling to break through some barrier and wanted to drill in. Han Fei. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. The demon purification pot could drill into his origin sea at this time. Han Fei thought, what does this guy want to do? Is he going to change places again? At this moment, Han Fei didn't have time to care about the origin sea. He could slowly expand the origin sea. Even after he became a king, he could still expand it. However, the 7th heavenly tribulation had already appeared. Han Fei saw a big lump of purple. Han Fei was dumbfounded at the sight of the purple blob. Damn! Do you think this can stop me? Han Fei grabbed 2 jade bottles with both hands again. Crack, crack with 2 crisp sounds, 2 third-level disaster pills appeared in Han Fei's hands. Han Fei clapped his hands to his mouth and swallowed 2 third-level disaster pills in a row. Down below, Xia Xiaochan finally got nervous and quickly looked at Ren Tianfei. Big purple heavenly tribulation, this is a sign of a demon tribulation. Demon tribulation? Everyone looked at Xia Xiaochan. Luo Xiaobai asked, what is a demon tribulation? Ren Tianfei said, there must be something wrong with the situation. Han Fei's heavenly tribulation has completely exceeded the level that a normal heavenly tribulation can bear. Every heavenly tribulation he has experienced now is comparable to the ultimate heavenly tribulation of ordinary people. The so-called demon tribulation is an unpredictable heavenly tribulation. No one knows how strong this heavenly tribulation will be. Gulp, at this time, everyone's heart sank. However, among everyone, only one person had a firm look in her eyes. This person was Han In. She firmly believed that Han Fei couldn't survive this heavenly tribulation. Boom, the seventh big purple heavenly tribulation seemed to have erected a pillar of lightning between heaven and earth. In the thousand-star city, everyone was dumbfounded. There was only that purple pillar of light left in the whole world. The halo spread infinitely far away. In the eyes of ordinary people, this was not a heavenly tribulation at all. This was simply a heavenly tribulation. However, Han Fei roared, stepped on the void, and with a roar, he rushed to meet it. Bam! At the moment when Han Fei collided with this heavenly tribulation, the two tribulation pills in his body were exploding crazily, as if they were going to burst out at this moment. Shoot! Han Fei's face changed drastically. This heavenly tribulation even impacted his soul. At the same time, Han Fei also felt that the power of the two tribulation pills was not enough. Immediately, Han Fei knew that he couldn't delay any longer. In the heavenly tribulation, a 5-patterned pill suddenly appeared in Han Fei's hand. Han Fei only had one 5-layered Dao pattern pill. This pill was not used for transcending the heavenly tribulation, but to make himself stronger. Han Fei roared, and his strength soared in an instant. Double his combat power greatly improved Han Fei in all aspects except his combat power. Han Fei hadn't dared to use the power of Tao and the Invincible Eye, fearing that his resources would be exhausted. Now, to Han Fei's surprise, this was only the 7th heavenly tribulation, and he had to use a 5-patterned pill. Then what about the next two? 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. At the 4th second, Han Fei's 7 orifices were no longer bleeding, but blood was gushing out. Han Fei was horrified. His soul must not be injured. Once his soul was injured, could he survive this heavenly tribulation? That was hard to say. Han Fei didn't hesitate at all. He used one of the 6th-grade soul pills he bought in the Martial Emperor city without hesitation. As soon as the soul pill came out, it was immediately printed between Han Fei's eyebrows. Han Fei felt that his soul seemed to have been added with a barrier. However, the light of the barrier flickered and was extremely unstable. After 2 seconds, cracks appeared on the soul pill barrier. But at this moment, the 7th heavenly tribulation had also dissipated. Puff! Han Fei spat out a mouthful of blood. However, Han Fei didn't hesitate and immediately shouted, Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. Chapter 1886. Han Fei looked solemn at this moment. Sea expansion was difficult. The 4 vines of the demon purification pot had crawled in. As for the primal chaos aura, it could absorb around 25 strands of it in every breath of time. At this moment, the origin sea had become an irregular lake that was 50 kilometers wide. However, compared to the real origin source sea, wasn't this a little too fucking small? However, the demon purification gourd had entered the origin sea, which meant that there should be a way to open up the origin sea in the future. Now, for Han Fei, the key problem was that he had used up all the triple Dao pattern pills. He had also used up all 5 Dao pattern pills. Now, Han Fei only had 2 6th-grade soul pills and 500 caddies of deep sea nether spring left. Of course, apart from these, there was also the energy and spiritual energy that was being emitted crazily from the Immortal Palace. Bang! As one of Han Fei's trump cards, Han Fei landed directly on the Divine Palace, and all the pores all over his body opened. Phew! As Han Fei's whole body was sucked in, he directly turned into a big cocoon of energy. A huge amount of energy and spiritual energy rushed at Han Fei's body crazily. Phew, phew! At this moment, Han Fei's big mouth and the pores all over his body were like bottomless abysses. Almost every second, he could directly swallow nearly 1% of the energy and spiritual energy of the divine palace. The spiritual energy, after entering Han Fei's body, was not used to fill his flesh and blood, refine his meridians, or improve his bones and blood. These powers were only used by Han Fei to resist the power of the heavenly tribulation. Of course, after resisting, the two energies became gentle and could reside in his body. In Han Fei's perception, the absorption of the tribulation cloud had exceeded his range of perception. In the sky, the eighth heavenly tribulation was still accumulating power. At this moment, there were already signs of dark purple. Han Fei's eyelids twitched and his lips twitched. He grabbed another 2 bottles with both hands. This was Han Fei's last 6th grade soul core. The immaculate body was still running crazily, and the origin sea was still expanding. Han Fei felt that his physical strength was rising crazily at an extremely fast speed. Han Fei would rather stay like this for an hour. If it was possible, Han Fei felt that his strength would soar by 50%. However, the heavenly tribulation wouldn't give him this chance. The 8th heavenly tribulation came without warning. When the dark purple lightning fell, the sky was filled with lightning webs. Han Fei stood on the divine palace, not moving at all, letting the heavenly tribulation bombard him. Almost in an instant, the 6th grade tribulation pill that he hadn't used last time immediately collapsed. However, Han Fei didn't panic at all and used 2 6th grade soul pills at the same time. He no longer had the time to deal with the final tribulation. He had to overcome the 8th tribulation first. Ah, Han Fei roared, and his voice shook the world. Who wouldn't be moved by that furious roar? This was the only time in the history of the 1,000-star city that someone had transcended a king-level tribulation. Han Fei's name had long been engraved in everyone's heart. No one wanted Han Fei to fail the tribulation. The stronger Han Fei was, the better the 1,000-star city would be. The better the scattered stars island was, the better the entire human race would be. Commander Han, hold on. Marshal Han is invincible. General Han, a mere heavenly tribulation won't be able to stop you. Marshal Han, heavenly tribulation is not worthy to be your opponent. Marshal Han, crack, crack, crack on Han Fei's body, cracks appeared one after another. However, Han Fei didn't care at all. Between Han Fei's eyebrows, a golden eye slowly opened. At that moment, Han Fei's roar resounded through the whole world. There are thousands of tribulations in this world, but only I, Han Fei, am invincible. The great Tao is one, roar. Swish at that moment, Han Fei finally took action. Although his body was covered with cracks, he pointed at the sky. In the divine palace, the energy was like a tide, and the spiritual energy was like a sea. At this moment, it all turned into a sword, pointing straight at the sky, going against the heavenly tribulation. In the 1,000-star city, the entire Yin-Yang heaven could see stars colliding in the sky. Whether it was the scattered stars island, the 36 towns, or the level 3 fishery, they could all see it. The sound of the king's Tao swept across the world. The heavenly water village. The old village leader climbed on the roof of his house, raised his hands high, and muttered, when, in the Blue Sea town, Li Gang led the entire fish dragons and was shouting, "Leader is invincible, leader will become a king." On the scattered stars island, the heavenly vine was waving its vines. The sky inspecting sword was already bald at this moment. The big sword seemed to be cheering for Han Fei. On the Forest of Horrors side, the strong masters had all arrived at the 1,000-star city. To be honest, they had long been shocked. It was really hard for them to imagine that all the people in the world were supporting this person. Yet, this person was able to last until now under such a power that did not seem to belong to the human world. Was he still human? In fact, when the people of the Forest of Horrors were surprised. Some people from the Immortal City and the Demon Beast Alliance also came to the Yin-Yang Heaven. Before, Han Fei had promised to let some people come to the Yin-Yang Heaven to have a look. Who knew that as soon as they came, they would see Han Fei transcending the tribulation? On the Immortal City's side, Chen Xiang and several of Han Fei's former subordinates were amazed. This was the first time they had seen someone transcend the tribulation and become a king. It was hard not to see such a huge scene. Yun Tianhe exclaimed, "General Han is far stronger than we thought." Hua Meng said, "I heard that the Black Snail King couldn't even take a sword strike from General Han. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see him. Otherwise, it would be enough for me to brag about for the rest of my life." Chen Xiang was secretly shocked. Is this Han Fei's real strength? It was ridiculous that she doubted whether he had the ability to become the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island. He was actually the master of the Yin-Yang Heaven. On the Demon Beast Alliance's side, Jiao Mengyue, Xiong Chaoshui, and the others came over. Golden Tiger howled, "What a pity. He should have called all the half-king realm powerhouses to come and watch." Transcending the king tribulation, this is a grand occasion that is rarely seen in 1,000 years. Jiao Mengyue shook her head and said, "It's useless to watch. Have you seen the strength of his king tribulation? I guess from the third heavenly tribulation onward, no ordinary person can withstand it. When did you see the purple lightning when old Yang transcended the tribulation?" At this moment, Han Fei pointed his sword at the heavenly tribulation, and the entire divine palace was providing him with power. Just a single glance at such a domineering and wild attack was a little unbearable. Just then, dense cracks appeared on Han Fei's whole body, from his fingers to his whole arm, and then to his whole body. And the apocalyptic divine technique didn't stop at all during this tribulation. Even if the apocalyptic divine technique didn't stop for a moment, it couldn't completely cure Han Fei. After all, the Tao Convergence sword was no match for the dark purple lightning, and it only lasted for 3 seconds. Fortunately, the power of hope of the human race was crazily penetrating into Han Fei's body. With the continuous consumption of the power of hope, Han Fei finally managed to keep his body intact. Otherwise, he would have been blown into pieces at this moment. Although his body was broken, Han Fei wasn't afraid. However, it would be a waste of time to recover. And now, what he lacked most was time. 3 seconds. 4 seconds. At the moment of the 5th second, with cracking sounds, Han Fei's bones were broken in many places. The barrier of the soul core was dim. The invincible eye collapsed. His third eye was damaged. Han Fei coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood and finally held on until the heavenly tribulation dissipated. At this moment, Xia Shaochan and the others were most worried. At this moment, Han Fei didn't seem to be in a very good state. His body was covered with cracks. There were even a few terrifying cracks, as if his body was about to split open. Fortunately, the heavenly awakening divine art did not have an endless supply of healing radiance. It was also because Han Fei had swallowed the vitality of too many strong masters before. That was the only reason he was able to use the heaven awakening divine skill to heal his body without any scruples. Xia Shaochan shouted, "Idiot, don't take it head-on. It's already the 9th heavenly tribulation, so you don't have to reach the monarch realm with your physical body." Ren Tianfei bellowed, "Brat, although I said that your body can also reach the divine connection realm, it's still not enough. But you're playing with fire. It's going to be the 9th tribulation soon. It's enough." Old Bai and Old Jiang also shouted to remind Han Fei. However, creaking sounds came from Han Fei's body, which was the sound of his bones recovering. Han Fei said, "If I'm going to walk, I'll walk on the path of a real expert. What I want is to suppress the chaotic sea. What I want is to break the cage. What I want is to walk to the extreme and stand on the other side of the sea." Roar! Han Fei waved his hand, and tens of millions of ultra-quality spiritual stones were scattered on the immortal palace. Han Fei used too much energy and spiritual energy in the immortal palace just now. Now, only less than half of this energy was left. And to resist the last tribulation, Han Fei had to try his best. Huff, huff, Han Fei opened his mouth and swallowed like a demon whale swallowing the sea. In every breath, there was an infinite amount of energy pouring into his body. And the sky suddenly opened, revealing a crimson color. Is that a red heavenly tribulation? They intertwined above the sky. At this moment, Han Fei had no time to care. The intake of the origin sea had become more than 50 strands of chaotic energy pouring in every breath. Han Fei didn't notice that in the origin sea, a familiar scene appeared. Here, there was land, a big pit, a river, and fertile soil. Roar! At this moment, Han Fei suddenly grinned. In his dantian, the Tao seed and the great Tao trembled. Han Fei's overall strength soared by 3 times in an instant. Not only that, Han Fei shouted, "Fuse!" As soon as he fused, black and white colors burst out of Han Fei's eyes. Dragon transformation technique. Roar! A dragon roar resounded through the entire Inyang sky. Han Fei's body began to swell. Immediately afterward, spiritual energy was like a hurricane, and dragon scales appeared in the storm. He turned around, and there was no one above the immortal palace. A black dragon hundreds of meters long, bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws, rose to the sky. People were amazed and exclaimed. "Is that the legendary dragon? Oh my God! Is General Han the reincarnation of a true dragon? So ferocious! Is this what a king looks like when he's facing the heavenly tribulation?" Rumble, above the sky, bright red lightning was intertwining, making loud noises. When Han Fei turned into a dot in the dark, a red pillar fell from the sky, as if a line had been opened between heaven and earth, breaking through the starry sky. Chapter 1887. The moment the red heavenly tribulation descended, everyone closed their eyes. This weird power was so dazzling that it made their eyes swollen. In this case, only venerable realm powerhouses could barely open their eyes. However, even though Xia Shaochan and the others could still observe, Han Fei had been completely enveloped by the heavenly tribulation. They could only see a shock wave in the center of the tribulation cloud, about to smash down. As for the rest, they couldn't see anything. At this moment, Xia Shaochan, Zhang Xuanyu, Luo Xiaobai, Luo Renquang, Ren Tianfei. These people's palms and foreheads were all sweaty, and they didn't dare to relax for a moment. Even Ren Tianfei was horrified. If he were in this kind of heavenly tribulation, he would be crushed into pieces in less than a second, let alone survive it. In fact, although Han Fei used the power of Tao and the dragon transformation technique, he didn't gain any advantage. Perhaps because he was a beginner, the dragon transformation technique only lasted for more than a second before it was beaten back to its original form. Han Fei's Tao was improved, but in the 3rd second, he felt that he couldn't bear it anymore and was about to collapse. The apocalyptic divine technique was still shining, but others couldn't see it. In desperation, Han Fei used the supreme yin-yang wheel. However, this method only lasted for half a second. Han Fei tried to use the Great Path of Time. However, the Great Path of Time couldn't be used at all here. At this time, Han Fei could no longer return to his previous strongest state. After finally holding on for the 5th second, Han Fei saw an invisible big shadow above the sky, which seemed to be rushing towards him from the heavenly tribulation. That scene seemed to be the demonic energy that the old turtle once used, and it seemed to be penetrating his mind. At this moment, the demon purification pot, which was opening up the origin sea, trembled violently. Han Fei knew that if he didn't use defensive weapons or arrays, he might not be able to hold on. Fine, Han Fei had planned to survive this tribulation in the most perfect state, relying on his body and his massive resources. However, he still underestimated the power of the heavenly tribulation, so he didn't prepare enough resources. If he had known this would happen, even if he had to sell his entire family's fortune, he would have bought it in Martial Emperor City until he had no more money to buy it. But now, it was too late. With a thought, he absorbed the last 500 caddies of deep-sea nether spring into his body. Otherwise, if the power of his soul couldn't withstand the power of the heavenly demon, wouldn't he fail the tribulation? This was something he absolutely could not tolerate. The first 99 steps had already been taken. How could he let this last step be ruined? However, when Han Fei was about to activate a dragon bone umbrella that he had prepared for a long time, suddenly, his glabella flashed again. With a chirp, boundless murderous intent suddenly enveloped Han Fei's body. A pair of black wings with a wingspan of 100 meters roared towards the sky. In Han Fei's mind, DK said, "Heavenly Fiend Battle Body." Han Fei was shocked. It wasn't that he hadn't considered using the power of the Emperor Sparrow. However, the Emperor Sparrow hadn't become a supremacy yet. He reckoned that it was only a half supremacy. No matter how powerful the Emperor Sparrow was, it was impossible for him to face the king's heavenly tribulation as a half-venerate, right? However, the D Sparrow had taken the initiative to appear at this moment. Innate battle physique. Phew, this time, Han Fei didn't absorb energy, but when he activated the innate battle physique, he couldn't help but gasp. Han Fei seemed to feel that there were thousands of troops behind him. He felt that he had set foot on the wild land. Han Fei felt that infinite terrifying murderous intent was bursting out of his body. At this moment, the heavenly fiend body in Han Fei's eyes didn't seem scary anymore. Han Fei's yin-yang divine eyes were gone. Instead, a pair of black pupils appeared. Eye of disaster. A crimson murderous intent burst out of Han Fei's eyes. The Emperor Sparrow's voice vaguely appeared in Han Fei's mind. Are you simulating the heavenly fiend again? The power of the heavenly tribulation hasn't changed for years. Do you know? I am the heavenly fiend. Chirp! Han Fei opened his mouth, and two intertwined streams of power, one clear and one yellow, rose to the sky. It was exactly the heavenly fiend aura that was formed by a wisp of immortal spiritual energy and murderous intent that Han Fei had accumulated. As soon as the attack was launched, a ball seemed to rise to the sky from the red pillar of lightning. Even the heavenly tribulation couldn't stop it. The power of the heavenly fiend aura went straight to the sky. Then, it turned into a huge ripple, shaking this place for hundreds of thousands of kilometers. At this moment, the world was eclipsed, and the sun and moon lost their light. At this moment, the whole world seemed to be caught in a hazy white mist. The heavenly tribulation was gone, and the last sentence that Han Fei heard in his mind was, "You are not strong enough." After a long time, everyone came back to themselves. At the moment when they came back to themselves, Xia Shaochan, Ren Tianfei, and the others forced themselves to look at the sky despite the tears in their eyes, until Xia Shaochan saw that above the divine palace, Han Fei's figure was standing proudly in midair. The surrounding spiritual energy was intertwined and poured into his body. Around Han Fei, there was a dazzling glow, which was the manifestation of the power of the Great Path. Xia Shaochan let out a long breath. Heh! This bastard, he only knows how to show off. He's so annoying. Xia Shaochan complained, and Luo Xiaobai and the others were relieved. Now, all of them had tears streaming down their faces. Not because they were crying, but because they were stung by the white light. After all, with their strength, they really couldn't take it. Ren Tianfei cursed, "Brat, you scared me." However, that thing can even survive the heavenly tribulation. Has he comprehended the indestructible divine body? No, I have to ask him later. Seeing that Xia Shaochan and Ren Tianfen were both relieved, everybody realized what was going on. Old Bai laughed loudly. Ha ha ha, the Thug Academy has a king. Old Jiang shouted, I've raised a king. Jiang Qin glanced at old Jiang. Okay, don't flatter yourself. Why don't you teach another one? Old Jiang snorted. Girl, don't argue with me. After another few hundred minutes, the 7 major sects finally realized what was going on. The Heavenly Sword Master said to Tang Gu via voice transmission, he has become a king. Tang Gu grinned with joy from the bottom of his heart. Jiao Mengyue, Zi Luo, and the others were all horrified at this moment. Zi Luo said, go back and tell everyone in the Forest of Horrors that from today on, they should all behave themselves and sincerely surrender. This person is too strong. Even if the Forest of Horrors has a king in the future, they will still be no match for him. Jiao Mengyue heaved a long sigh and patted Niu Dali's shoulder. Dali, don't think about it. If he were really a bull, it would be fine. However, he is a human. Now, He is a real king, the master of the yin-yang heaven. While everyone was exclaiming, Han Fei was amazed by another thing. When he focused on the heavenly tribulation, he found that his gourd was hovering in his origin sea. His origin sea, on the other hand, had turned into Forge the Universe. Han Fei was stunned. When I transcended the 8th level of the heavenly tribulation, the origin sea was only 100 kilometers in size. How did it become Forge the Universe in the blink of an eye? Han Fei tried to confirm it again and again. He found that when his mind was immersed in the Tao seed, he directly entered Forge the Universe. No, he entered the origin sea. And when he wanted to directly enter Forge the Universe from his mind, it was useless. Wow! So, did I open up the origin sea or didn't I? However, Han Fei still sensed something wrong after a sweep of his perception. He scanned with his perception and found that the size of this origin sea had reached a radius of 6,000 kilometers. In terms of diameter, it was more than 12,000 kilometers. Han Fei's eyelids twitched wildly for a while. Although surprised, Han Fei thought of another thing. If Forge the Universe had become his origin sea, could he let others enter the origin sea? Han Fei felt that he had to find someone to try this idea. If it was possible, it would be terrible. In his origin sea, time was accelerated 32 times. 1 year of cultivation here was equivalent to 32 years in the outside world. How could this be a joke? Of course, he had to try it later. At this time, Han Fei felt that the power in his body was changing. It was no longer spiritual energy transforming his body, but a Taoist aura nourishing his body. This was the Taoist aura of a strong master born by himself, the power of the Great Path. Han Fei felt that he could see 500,000 kilometers at a glance. At this moment, he felt that in the thousand-star city, countless people were exclaiming, praying, asking, and sighing. In an instant, there was too much information that could be gathered in his mind. Only then did Han Fei understand what the old turtle said. A king could monitor the world. What he said was not false. Han Fei heard his name from the mouths of countless people. In fact, he could even follow a certain voice and instantly descend with his divine senses to talk to only him. Just like how he heard Zhou Yinling's soft voice among the countless voices, I knew you would become a king. Congratulations, wait for me too. Han Fei could see Zhou Yinling facing the dazzling white light with tears streaming down her face, but she didn't care. Sigh, Han Fei saw Su Yang kneeling on the ground on the Pure Sun Island and saying with a trembling voice, Patriarch, we won the bet. The best decision we made in our lives was to send Daji and Su Sanqian to the Thug Academy. Now, Marshal Han has become a king. One day, the Su family might also give birth to a true expert. Outside the ideal palace, Han Fei heard Ren Tianfei and old Jiang showing off that he was their disciple. Apart from this, Han Fei sensed that there was a dragon ball hidden underground at the original site of the ideal palace. Sensing Han Fei's gaze, the Azure Dragon said leisurely, Congratulations on transcending the tribulation and becoming a king. I hope you keep your promise. Han Fei directly replied, Of course. I won't go back on my promise to you. At this moment, Han Fei was also very excited. He had just transcended the tribulation, and there were still many things to consider. He still needed to consolidate his strength. Han Fei immediately focused his mind, and his information appeared in his mind. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 90, C expansion, C family tree, 1321219, chaotic energy greater than 5226 wisps, spiritual power 479988, perception range greater than 500,000 kilometers, power greater than 125,694 waves, first spiritual heritage, unknown, second spiritual heritage, unknown, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 80, second spiritual beast Emperor Sparrow, level 80, main art void descent, level 7 of void fishing, king level, divine quality. Chapter 1888. When he saw this information, Han Fei was overjoyed. Finally, God rewarded those who tried. His strength could be said to have skyrocketed by more than several times. In terms of strength alone, he had tripled. He remembered what old Yuan said, what's his strength after the sea expansion? More than 80,000 waves. This was already beyond the reach of ordinary people. What about himself? A full 120,000 waves. With a little cultivation, 130,000 waves was not a problem. With this strength, if he entered the chaotic sea again, what top 10 pirate groups? What North Black Ice? What Wind Heart Orchid? He wasn't afraid of any of them. Of course, apart from the increase in strength, Han Fei also found that his bloodline had doubled in power. This time, it really doubled. From 272 million to 132 million, a terrifying increase of 1.4 million. Gulp. Han Fei swallowed hard. Han Fei knew that 132 million should be an extremely terrifying number. He had to go through such a terrifying heavenly tribulation to reach this rank. It could be seen how many strong bloodlines there were in the sea expansion realm. The list of the 10,000 races in the sea also made Han Fei realize that he was not the top existence among the 10,000 races in the sea. Therefore, he had to continue to work hard. At this time, the simplest way was to swallow the bloodline directly. At this time, Han Fei's heart thumped, and information appeared. 10,000 races in the sea, 296202223 owner, 1321219 nearby bloodlines, Ancient Azure Dragon, Time Dragon Carp, Golden Crow Divine Blood, Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish, Emperor Sparrow, Hexagon Starfish, Recommended Bloodline, Ancient Azure Dragon. When he saw this information, the corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. The most suitable bloodline for this ranking was actually the bloodline of the Ancient Azure Dragon. This meant that the bloodline of the Hexagon Starfish was even stronger than that of the Ancient Azure Dragon. This was quite beyond Han Fei's expectation. The Hexagon Starfish basically didn't cultivate at all, but relied on inheritance. It relied on the clam girl to massage it. If it hadn't met Han Fei and given it a beating every now and then, this guy might still be lying on the bed. In terms of enjoyment, no one could surpass the Hexagon Starfish. But this guy's bloodline was stronger than the Ancient Azure Dragon's. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised by this. Just what level were these mysterious creatures at? Han Fei had encountered a mysterious one before. However, compared with Mr. Hexagon Starfish, Little Black, and Little White, they were far inferior. Now, the Emperor Sparrow had also become mysterious. The Arch Sparrow was the most ferocious beast in the primordial world. He was a freak who had led a group of vicious beasts to wage war against divine beasts for 3,000 years. But was this guy also going to turn mysterious? I wonder what's so good about the mystery category. Thinking of the Emperor Sparrow, Han Fei was shocked. In the last heavenly tribulation, the Emperor Sparrow helped him kill the extraterrestrial devil. Based on what the Arch Sparrow had said, it was a heavenly demon. Was this guy a devil? It was only a demigod. Wait a minute, Han Fei looked again, only to find that the Emperor Sparrow was already level 80. Did he become a venerable one? When did he become a venerable? Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Did this guy swallow the lightning tribulation when he fused with the Emperor Sparrow? So, he directly became a venerable. He had already caught up with Little Black and Little White. Han Fei was speechless. At this speed, would this guy also become a king in a few years? In addition to the improvement of his strength and the ranking of the 10,000 races in the sea, Han Fei found that his soul power had increased by about 100,000 points. Compared to his strength, the improvement of his soul power wasn't much. His strength had tripled, and his soul power had increased by about 30%. However, Han Fei was already very satisfied. After all, he had just entered the Pioneer Sea realm. Once he stabilized his power as a king, his combat power would be much more than what he saw on the surface. After reading this basic information, Han Fei sensed that what he had in his body was actually spiritual energy. However, the quality of the spiritual energy was vastly different from before. Moreover, It was the Taoist rhyme that led the flow of the pure spiritual qi, the Taoist rhyme that was born within him. All of a sudden, Han Fei was slightly surprised. Why did his chaotic energy increase instead of decrease? Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Wouldn't the chaotic energy be consumed during the tribulation? Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, can you hear me?" The old turtle's voice sounded leisurely. "I can hear you. When the heavenly tribulation appeared, I restrained all my aura. This is the pure yang lightning. If I have a trace of it, I'm afraid I'll be directly struck into ashes." In fact, the old turtle was also amazed. How on earth did this guy survive a heavenly tribulation of this level? When the old turtle saw the purple lightning and the bright red lightning all over the sky, he even felt that he was going to die. He even wanted to remind Han Fei not to resist it head-on. Who would have thought that Han Fei actually dared to resist it head-on? Needless to say, Han Fei's strength, soul power, perception, and all other aspects at this moment were much stronger than when he was at the beginning. Because Han Fei resisted it head-on, he absorbed the most power of the heavenly tribulation. In this world, how many people could do this? However, Han Fei didn't care about this. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, what's going on with my origin sea?" The old turtle said, "Well, I don't know. Your gourd world has merged with the origin sea. Or rather, the two are originally connected. You might as well ask the gourd. I really can't answer this." "But..." Han Fei asked, "But what?" The old turtle said, "If the space of the gourd becomes the origin sea, this should be a great thing. In the origin sea, you are the master. Unlike in the space of the gourd, you can even use the time here. Of course, it can only be determined according to the range of time acceleration in the space of the gourd. You can't exceed it or shorten it." Huh? Han Fei couldn't help but think, sure enough, the time acceleration in the origin sea has become 10 times faster. However, Han Fei was only surprised for a while. Thinking about it carefully, he realized that this was a skill for accumulation. My own origin sea, I can definitely be in a state of full acceleration. Han Fei said again, "Old Yuan, this origin sea is mine. In that case, can I enter the origin sea to cultivate now?" The old turtle nodded. Of course. The origin sea is everyone's most mysterious place. Of course, when you come in, you need to be in a state of absolute silence and calm your mind. Unlike before, you can easily enter the space of the gourd as long as you have 3 seconds. Huh? Is that so? Han Fei couldn't help but frown. If this was the case, it would be inconvenient for him to escape. If it was in a battle, it would not be as convenient as before. Therefore, he had to be more careful in the future. Han Fei asked, "So, when I enter the origin sea, others can't perceive it, right?" The old turtle nodded. Theoretically, yes, because others can't find your origin sea. However, when you enter the origin sea, the spatial node you left is fixed. So, you can only come out from there. Besides, if there is really an extremely strong master of the Tao of space, it is possible to directly dig out your origin sea from the spatial node. Han Fei's heart sank. It seems that I can't use the origin sea randomly in the future during the war. Otherwise, it will be easy to be ambushed. If I can't beat them, I'm afraid I'm doomed. Han Fei asked, "One last question, why is the chaotic qi still there?" The old turtle explained, "The chaotic qi is used to support the existence of the origin sea. The more chaotic qi there is, the more the origin sea looks like a normal small world. And a normal small world can not only store your own Tao, but also generate new power of Tao and feed it back to you in case of emergencies." Han Fei raised his eyebrows. "You sound like you're creating a world." At this moment, above the Yin-Yang Palace, the energy and spiritual energy that were originally used to support the Eye of Heavenly Path had basically been swallowed by Han Fei. Those that hadn't been swallowed had basically dissipated with the blazing white mist. It could be said that on this day, the spiritual energy and energy above the 1,000-star city were nearly 10 times denser. Anyone who was smart would have already sat cross-legged and cultivated at this moment. In the Thousand-Star City, there were countless people who had made breakthroughs. Han Fei looked at the desolate palace and then at the courtyard protected by the heaven and earth natural array. Han Fei held the pestle in his hand and suddenly found that he seemed to be able to use the real power of the heaven and earth natural array. At this moment, Han Fei's eyes and even his brain were spinning much faster than before. At this moment, through the seal, Han Fei found that a map had appeared in the heaven and earth natural array. This was a map of the entire Yin-Yang heaven. According to the location of this map, Han Fei found that this thing seemed to be real-time. In other words, it could reflect the situation of the Yin-Yang heaven in real time. This feeling made Han Fei immediately think of the sea-quelling painting. Back then, he and the others were watching the changes of the stars in the sea-quelling painting. When he was looking for the star map in the pool of the floating island in the painting, as long as he thought of it, he could appear where he should appear according to the map. Han Fei thought of something, and a projection fell directly into the map. As a result, the next moment, Han Fei's projection appeared above the level 3 fishery. Sure enough. With this thing, as long as he was in the palace, with the heaven and earth natural array, he could instantly reach any place in the Yin-Yang heaven. Han Fei came up with a plan in his mind. The white mist didn't dissipate so quickly. Therefore, at this moment, only some people could see that Han Fei was safe and sound. Most people closed their eyes and couldn't open them, so they could only open their mouths and shout. Does anyone know what's going on? Has General Han made a breakthrough or not? I don't know. Han Fei didn't say anything either. Hey, this white mist doesn't seem to be so dazzling. I can already see some of it. Hey, look at the sky. Many people squinted or covered their eyes at this moment, looking up. They saw that the palace was surrounded by clouds and mist, full of immortal air. Han Fei thought of something, and the sound of the great Tao spread throughout the Yin-Yang heaven. Han Fei said, "Fellow human, I am Han Fei. I have learned a lot from this sea expansion. I boldly tell the world that I, Han Fei, call myself the human king today. Although I am happy to have the sea expansion, the human race is still in the abyss of suffering. We are still trapped in a cage. Outside the cage, there are thousands of enemies. There are kings, venerables, and countless explorers. Since I have become a king, I will naturally lead the human race to prosperity. One day, we will go to the outside world. One day, everyone in the Yin-Yang heaven will be like dragons. Roar, break the cage and go to the outside world. Human king, human king, human king, billions of people were howling, and their power of will was gathering. Whether it was the Forest of Terror, the Undying Kingdom, or the Demon Beast Alliance, at this moment, everyone was dumbfounded, and those who were familiar with Han Fei all had a strange look on their faces. He called himself the Human King. I'm afraid only Han Fei could do this, right? Chapter 1889. 10 years later. It had been 10 years since Han Fei transcended the tribulation and became a king. The Yin-Yang heaven welcomed the first real king in its history. Most people still felt that he deserved the title of king. After all, it was Han Fei who wiped out the big clans, wiped out the sea demons, and saved mankind. Han Fei had created too many firsts. There was no one in the Yin-Yang heaven who did not know his name. Half a year after Han Fei became a king, the cage channel between the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven was completely broken, and the two realms were truly connected. The immortal city of the human clan and the demon beast alliance each migrated a group of people to the Yin-Yang heaven. In fact, everyone knew that the territory of the immortal palace was only so big and there was only so much spiritual energy. Migrating too many people was not conducive to the cultivation and development of all clans. In fact, many people were still guarding the cage in the immortal city of the human clan, the Demon Beast Alliance, and the Forest of Terror. After all, although Han Fei killed more than 80 sea demons and even the Black Killer Snail King, there were still hundreds of sea demon venerables in the Black Blood City. The number of explorers was uncountable. How could these people not know that they were trapped in a cage and used as whetstones? These years, they had been living in fear. Whether it was the Demon Beast Alliance, the immortal city of the human clan, or the Forest of Terror, they could all join the human race or establish diplomatic relations with the human race. However, the sea demons couldn't. The sea demons were born to oppose all clans. In the past, the reason why they could establish diplomatic relations with the Forest of Terror was mainly because the number of strong cultivators in the Forest of Terror was small and they were threatened by the Demon Beast Alliance. And they had to find a force to ally with. Now, the Forest of Terror didn't care about the Black Blood City at all. And in the past 10 years, when countless people were immersed in the wonderful life of increasing spiritual energy and accelerating cultivation, they didn't know that there were dozens of more cracks in the cage. And this meant that, the cage was really slowly collapsing. The conclusion that Han Fei gave was that the cage would collapse within 100 years. But now, with the increase of cracks, the number of 100 years would inevitably be advanced. Of course, there were disadvantages and advantages. In the past 10 years, the overall spiritual energy level of the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven had more than tripled. The increase of spiritual energy more than tripled meant that the number of human cultivators was increasing. The potential and spiritual heritage of humans were improving. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai was really in charge of the mansion. At this moment, someone was reporting, "Marshal, according to the latest batch of data, we tested all the children between the ages of 8 and 10 in the 1,000-star city and the 36 towns and made a shocking discovery. The children with spiritual pulse level 2 and below accounted for less than 20% of the total. As for the children below the age of 8, we tested them in batches. We found that the later they were born, the higher the grade of their spirit meridians. Our human race will usher in a new rise." Luo Xiaobai slightly nodded. "Continue the census. Be it the 1,000-star city or the 36 towns, set up a special branch to collect the latest data in real time." "Yes, Marshal." Right at this moment, someone suddenly shouted, "Report." "Marshal, it's urgent." Luo Xiaobai said, "Come in." A young man in the explorer level hurried through the door. Ignoring the fact that there were still people around, he immediately said, "Commander, another crack has appeared on the wall of death in the north. It's more than 300 meters tall and 40 meters wide." Before Luo Xiaobai said anything, the person who was in the meeting just now couldn't help but be shocked. "So big?" Luo Xiaobai took a deep breath and said, "Got it. I'll deal with this matter personally. Continue patrolling and report to me immediately if there's any situation." "Yes, Marshal." After the two of them left, Luo Xiaobai sat on the chair and rubbed her eyebrows slightly. Everyone could slack off, but she couldn't. Yin-Yang heaven had just ushered in a turning point for the rise of the human race. At this important moment, the problem of the wall of death was getting more and more serious. "Thud, thud," Luo Xiaobai said indifferently, "Come in." Luo Xiaobai had just perked up, but she saw that no one came in. But in the next moment, he felt a pair of ice-cold hands covering his eyes. Luo Xiaobai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "When did you come out of seclusion?" "Childish. If I were as strong as you, I would definitely have discovered you immediately." "Giggle, who else could it be but Xia Shaochan?" She said, "I asked you to resign from your position as the Supreme Commander, but you refused. How tiring is it to stay here every day?" Luo Xiaobai rolled her eyes at Xia Shaochan and said, "It's not that I don't want to, but the situation is so serious that I can't let my guard down. If the cage is broken, the chaotic ocean will not be able to stop the experts from the outside world. At that time, if we encounter those powerful enemies from the outside world, the human race may still not survive this disaster. By the way, you've come out of seclusion. Where is our master human king?" Xia Shaochan said, "He went to seal the crack, and by the way, he went to see the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and the others." "How are they doing in the cage?" Luo Xiaobai immediately closed the stack of documents on the table and said, "Let's go. I'll give myself half a day off and go back to school." Xia Shaochan said, "I'm here to call you." Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renquang have also come out of seclusion and are waiting for you. Luo Xiaobai couldn't help but be surprised. What day is it today? Why are you all out of seclusion? Xia Shaochan said, I'll tell you later. Look at how busy you are now, and the pressure on you is so heavy. You should be more active. It's best if you can find a boy that you like. Then your daily life will be interesting. The corners of Luo Xiaobai's mouth twitched. I'm different from you. I'm not interested in love. Xia Shaochan nodded. Yes, you are a woman who wants to become infinitely stronger. You want to become a king as soon as possible. It's been 10 years. You've accumulated a lot of power of will, haven't you? Why are you only a peak-level intermediate venerable? Luo Xiaobai smiled slightly. Of course I'm cultivating the pure mystic body. After 10 years of polishing, I feel that I've reached the limit of the intermediate venerable. As for Lu Renquang and Zhang Xuanyu, they are cultivating with the help of star beads. What realm are they in now? Xia Shaochan said, you'll know in a moment. Thug Academy. The Thug Academy at this time was no longer the Thug Academy of the past. Even Wen Renyu and Xiao Zhan had now reached the Explorer realm. After all, none of the students who could enter the Thug Academy were weak. Although Wen Renyu and Xiao Zhan were not the strongest, as teachers, ordinary people couldn't compare to them. Now, they had at least 30 people with them, and they were cultivating. These 30 people were all the best seedlings that Old Bai, Old Jiang, Jiang Chao, and the others had plundered from the 1,000-star city and the 36 towns. Today, the Thug Academy on the Scattered Stars Island had become their permanent residence. When Luo Xiaobai and Xia Shaochan passed by their training ground, many people exclaimed, it's Senior Sister Luo. Senior Sister Luo now has a domineering aura on her. I don't dare to approach her. Ha! Who's that next to Senior Sister Luo? Someone immediately patted him on the shoulder. Idiot, that's Senior Sister Shaochan. Who else could be so intimate with Senior Sister Luo and even talk so cheerfully and wittily? Huh? Senior Sister Martial God? Didn't she say that she went into seclusion with Senior Brother Renwang? Why did she come out today? Someone exclaimed, Senior Sister Shaochan has come out of seclusion. Where's Senior Brother Han Fei? Someone frowned. What's Senior Brother Han Fei? He's Senior Brother Renwang. Someone whispered, let me tell you, I saw Senior Brother Yu and Senior Brother Quang today. Do you think that today is the day of their gathering? Someone suggested, shall we sneak over and have a look? Smack as soon as this person said so, he saw a slap in the face. The student who spoke was stunned by the slap. Smack. Do you want to sneak away? Who gave you the guts? Smack. One must not be impatient in cultivation. As soon as your senior brother and senior sister show up, their souls are gone. The boy covered his head, twisted his body, and turned into dozens of shadows. He said, Mr. Xiaozhan, I know I was wrong. I just said it casually. Smack, a fishing line swept across, and dozens of shadows were wiped out in an instant. Then, another slap came down. You're still hiding. Do you think you can escape? At this moment, suddenly, the void shook, and a figure walked out of the void. The newcomer smiled and said, Hey! Mr. Xiaozhan, are you in class? Seeing the newcomer, Xiaozhan grinned and said, just like you, disobedient and troublemakers. If I don't teach you, you won't become useful people. Seeing those junior brothers and sisters who were shocked and full of admiration, Han Fei couldn't help but smile. You have to listen to Mr. Xiaozhan's words. He is a teacher who has taught kings. Think carefully. Xiaozhan immediately blushed and said, Are you trying to embarrass me? Go, 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 the two girls have just left. Go and have a gathering. Han Fei nodded with a smile and then said, Oh. Just now, I went to the cage and brought you a Buddha Black Mountain conch. I left it here for you. After that, Han Fei waved his hand, and the huge conch corpse, which was 70 or 80 meters long, rolled to the ground, causing the ground to shake with a bang. Xiao Zhan curled his lips and said, "Can't I hunt it myself? Do I need you to bring it to me?" Han Fei chuckled and disappeared to the backyard of the academy. Xiao Zhan walked to the Black Mountain Luo and knocked him twice. With a wave of his hand, he put away the Black Mountain conch. He couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. This brat must know that he was about to make a breakthrough. So, he deliberately got this thing back. This Buddha Black Mountain conch was a big conch in the semi-venerable realm. With his current strength, even if he went with Wenren, he might not be able to defeat it. He would probably have to ask Wang Dashui and the others to help him. "Brat, you're really considerate, Mr. Xiao Zhan, can we have a holiday today?" Someone said this, and Xiao Zhan's face immediately became serious. "A holiday? Was your head hit by an iron-head fish? The wall of death is full of cracks, and you still want a holiday?" The man muttered, "Senior brother Han Fei, can we get together occasionally?" Xiao Zhan immediately scolded with a smile, "If you become a king, I won't care about you. No, if you can become a venerable, I won't care about you. Now, get ready to go to sea with me." Chapter 1890. In the backyard of the Thug Academy. When Luo Xiaobai saw Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renkuang, she was surprised. "How come you two are also peak-level mid-level venerable?" Zhang Xuanyu said with a smile, "Why are you also a peak-level mid-level venerable?" Luo Xiaobai immediately understood. It turned out that not only was she suppressing the limit of each realm, but they were also doing the same. Luo Xiaobai couldn't help looking at Xia Shaochan. "Don't tell me that you have been suppressing your realm, so you have been stuck in the half-king realm for 10 years? Xia Shaochan shrugged and said, "I started earlier than you." In fact, Xia Shaochan really wanted to say that in the past 10 years, her strength was at its lowest, almost falling below the venerable realm. She had to take a lot of effort to fix it. Old Jiang said, "Little fatty, come here and get some food." Lu Renkuang responded, "Yes, I'm coming." At this moment, Old Bai was holding a handful of peanuts in his hand, chewing them while saying, "We were wandering." "Why did you call us back?" Xia Shaochan said, "Wait for Han Fei to come back. He has something to say." Zhang Xuanyu smiled and said, "Why? Did he comprehend some ultimate skill again?" Suddenly, a voice said leisurely, "Ultimate skill? I didn't comprehend it. Did you comprehend it?" Zhang Xuanyu immediately responded, "Ha! You don't say. In the past few years, I have fused the great techniques together and created a set of self-strengthening staff techniques. Let's have a fight later." "You don't have to fight with me. Now, my moves are full of Taoist aura. It's useless except for feeding you moves. However, if you want to fight, it's still possible." Zhang Xuanyu said, "You mean in the cage?" "Over the years, as many as 10 venerables have died in my hands. If it weren't for Little White forcibly forbidding me from entering the cage, I would have killed them all. Believe it or not." Luo Xiaobai immediately said grumpily, "Those people in the Black Blood City are for others to gain experience. If you kill them all, what else can they do?" Zhang Xuanyu shrugged. "It can't be helped. Now, the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven are in harmony. The Waterwood Heaven is our friend, the Demon Beast Alliance is our friend, and the Immortal City is our friend. Even the Forest of Terror has surrendered. Who else can we find to fight other than Black Blood City? Apart from the Black Blood City, the venerables of the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven basically have nothing to do now. Apart from Black Blood City, the venerables of the Yin-Yang Heaven and Waterwood Heaven basically have nothing else to do." Han Fei scoffed. "Nonsense, the venerable realm requires a lot of cultivation. Is the disassembly rate of spiritual energy very high? Have you comprehended all the battle skills? I have nothing to do every day. Tian by white, in, by, how many venerables do we have now? Chen, there are Ping, white yang yi, as for the explorers, there were more than 2,000 of them. Then, by white air said. Old Jiang said, don't just stand there and chat. Come and make dumplings. They chatted while making dumplings. Everyone, including Luo Xiaobai, the marshal, and Han Fei, the human king, took action. Where are Nian, and Yin, Where are Nian, and Yin, Didn't you meet them when you went to the cage? While making dumplings, Han Fei said, now, the concentration of spiritual energy in the yin-yang heaven is getting higher and higher. However, there are more and more strong masters. Therefore, the spiritual energy is obviously not enough. In another 10 years, there will be a lot of strong masters, right? Luo Xiaobai said, if the wall of death continues to transmit spiritual energy to the yin-yang heaven, with the current growth rate and the spiritual heritage of the newborns, I conservatively estimate that there will be 50,000 to 100,000 explorers. The number of human venerables will probably increase to about 80. Han Fei said, what if someone is going through a king tribulation? Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Han Fei. A king tribulation? Han Fei said, in the waterwood heaven, Jing has become a king tribulation. Xiong Chaoshui of the Demon Beast Alliance has become a king tribulation. Luo Xiaobai and the others all knew what Han Fei was talking about. However, the strong masters of the yin-yang heaven were basically in the big clans. And the big clans were basically wiped out by Han Fei. Therefore, when someone was going through a king tribulation, the yin-yang heaven could only watch. Han Fei said, Tang Yan is going through a king tribulation. He will succeed. Hearing that it was Tang Yan, everyone nodded and didn't seem surprised. Luo Xiaobai asked, then what about Tang Gu? Everyone knew that Han Fei and Tang Gu were good friends. In the past few years, Tang Gu had also made rapid progress. Especially after finding the path of swordsmanship, he also had the strength to fight across realms. This was the horror of a sword cultivator. Han Fei said, I went to see Tang Gu. He said that he cultivated swordsmanship and cut off Tang Yan's memory. From now on, he is himself, and Tang Yan is Tang Yan. So, it's not a big problem. Luo Xiaobai asked, so, you came out this time because Tang Yan is going to have a king tribulation? Han Fei nodded. That's part of the reason. Zhang Xuanyu, what about the other part? Han Fei smiled slightly. I want to go out. Wow, everyone couldn't help but stop what they were doing. Luo Xiaobai's eyelids twitched. If you go out now, will the cage collapse immediately? Han Fei said, Xiaobai. This place can't withstand many people's king tribulations. This time it's Tang Yan, next time it will definitely be Chao Tianji's turn. As the population increases, the cultivation speed increases, and the various clans in the cage cultivate crazily. I'm afraid we won't be able to hold on for 100 years. Old Bai said, you mean, you want to take some people out? Han Fei nodded slightly. Yes. In addition to the few of us, I'm going to preach in the 2 worlds and all clans. Preach? Everyone couldn't help but be shocked. Everyone in the Thug Academy had enjoyed the preaching that Han Fei was talking about. Although as soon as they heard Han Fei's preaching, they would feel sleepy and then fall asleep. However, every time they fell asleep and woke up, they could feel that they had more or less gained something. Among them, the greatest benefit was that after Han Fei preached many times, the spiritual energy dismantling rate of Zhang Xuanyu and the others had reached 90%. Han Fei was sure that as long as he preached more, they would eventually gain something. In fact, when he preached for the Venerable Emperor, his spiritual energy dismantling rate had directly increased to 100%. In fact, it wasn't that they didn't know how to dismantle spiritual energy, but that they lacked someone who could dismantle spiritual energy 100% to teach them more. Luo Xiaobai was slightly surprised. Who are you going to target this time? Han Fei pondered for a moment. All the venerables in the 2 worlds. Luo Xiaobai said, that's too few. A total of 542 people. How about adding venerables, peak stage venerables, and semi-venerables? Han Fei couldn't help but ask in surprise, how many people will that be? Luo Xiaobai nodded. It's simple. Just select 10,000 people. I'll do it in one day. Han Fei was stunned for a while. Well, okay. Old Bai asked in surprise, are you going to take them all away? Han Fei shook his head. Of course not. We can't just sit and wait for the cage to break. To put it bluntly, no matter how many explorers there are below the Venerable Realm, it's useless. We can't be satisfied with creating a force comparable to the immortal palaces in the outside world in 100 years. At that time, the immortal palaces in the outside world will join forces to kill us. Maybe we can successfully take over all the humans in the Waterwood Heaven and the Yinyang Heaven. Of course, it may also be a massacre. Everyone's heart sank. What Han Fei was worried about was the future of the Yinyang Heaven. As Han Fei said, it was indeed time to go out. Luo Xiaobai said, I'll do it. Your reputation in the Waterwood Heaven is also high enough. The quality of the people who will attend this sermon won't be bad. Han Fei said, by the way, pass your position as the Supreme Commander back to Shueishanqi. Old Shui has been managing the Scattered Stars Island for a long time and is very stable. There won't be any big mistakes. Of course, unless you don't want to go outside. Luo Xiaobai said, go. Even if I continue to serve as the Supreme Commander, I still can't save the entire human race. The way is not here. If there are thousands of years and enough resources, maybe the Yinyang Heaven can rise again. But we don't. Luo Xiaobai seemed to have put down a heavy burden in her heart, and she actually smiled. No one knew the overall situation of the Yinyang Heaven better than she did. The growth of the Yinyang Heaven came too fast. It was like a dry desert, crazily absorbing the moisture of rain. There were even towering trees snatching water resources. If this went on, the spiritual energy in this place could no longer be increased. Unless more cracks appeared in the cage, which would inevitably lead to the cage breaking earlier. Luo Xiaobai said, I'm going now. Xia Shaochan shouted, don't worry. Go after dinner. It's a big deal. Do you think it's just a matter of time? Old Jiang snorted and said, this matter, it's up to Han Fei and Shaochan. Also, someone has to stay behind to guard it. Old Bai and I are too old. Even if we can make another breakthrough, it will be extremely difficult for us to transcend the tribulation and become kings. However, we can still take care of the Scattered Stars Island. Han Fei nodded slightly. Tang Yan also has to stay. We can't give him resources to become a king for nothing. He has to do something. And that Chao Tianji also needs someone to keep him in check. Old Jiang said, okay. You, as a human king, can think about these things. Now, don't discuss these things. After dinner, you can deal with it. Han Fei. Chapter 1891. Half a day later. Over the Scattered Stars Island, the sky bloomed. Luo Xiaobai announced her departure and returned the Scattered Stars Island to Shueishanqi, which caused a stir. The next day, at noon. On the Scattered Stars Island, in the Thousand Star City, and in the 36 towns, people were talking about Luo Xiaobai's departure. Someone sighed and said, it's a pity. Marshal Luo is actually very good. Although he is a little indifferent, the policies he promulgated and the institutions he set up are really for the people. Someone said, Marshal Luo is very popular. The reason why the human king is famous is that he liberated the human race, destroyed the sea demons, and slaughtered the major clans. But in the revitalization of the human race, it's all thanks to Marshal Luo. Someone said, why did he return to Marshal Shui's hands? Someone guessed, it's probably because Marshal Luo hasn't been in office for a long time and hasn't found a satisfactory person to take over. But what I'm wondering is, since he hasn't found anyone to take over, why doesn't he spend more time looking for or training someone? Just as the crowd was discussing the matter, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in the sky. The voice said, Yinyang Heaven, all human race comrades, I'm Han Fei, the human king. Today, I have 3 things to announce. Wow! Human King. The Human King has spoken. It's been 10 years. This is the first time the Human King has spoken. Don't be noisy. Listen. In the sky, Han Fei's voice shook. In the past 10 years, the spiritual energy of our yin-yang heaven has been increasing, the strength of our human race has been increasing, and the number of our experts has been increasing. Our human race is rising. However, the reason behind our rise is because this cage is collapsing. Now, everyone should be familiar with the so-called 36 mysterious heavens. Yes, there are many enemies outside waiting for me. I can't just sit and wait for death. Therefore, I'm prepared to head out of the cage and form alliances to find a place for the human race to live in the outside world 100 years later. Indeed, in the past few years, Luo Xiaobai had intentionally or unintentionally revealed the term, chaotic ocean. Once a matter was publicized as a secret, then while this secret was no longer a secret, it would definitely draw the curiosity of most cultivators. At this moment, as soon as Han Fei said this, the hearts of countless people shook. They knew where Han Fei was going, it was definitely the chaotic ocean. It was a world that was said to be filled with kings and venerables. Someone sighed, His Majesty the Human King is devoted to the people and carries the fate of billions of people on his shoulders. How can we enjoy ourselves in peace? We should constantly strive to improve ourselves. Someone's face was full of longing. I really hope to accompany Lord Human King to conquer the outer realms. Someone was speechless. Why don't you take a look at yourself? What's the use of hoping? A young man's eyes were filled with worship. Human King is invincible. One day, I will be like a sovereign personage, conquering the outer realms. In the voices of billions of people, Han Fei continued, in addition to this news, I have a few things to do before I leave. The first thing I'll do is to spend 20 million supreme-grade spirit stones in the chaotic Azure Sea. In addition, I have already set up 10 great treasure troves in the Yin-Yang Heaven Sea region. Inside are many of my great techniques, cultivation experiences, weapons and equipment. I have already scattered the treasure maps throughout the world. Everyone, first come, first served. Work hard to grow. What? 10 great treasure troves. 20 million supreme-grade spirit stones. Swish, swish, swish. Everyone only saw that above the sky was full of meteors, scattering in all directions. In the level 3 fishery, the major fisheries of the 36 towns, outside the scattered stars island, in the 1,000-star city. Supreme-grade spirit stones streaked across the sky and fell. His Majesty is really generous. At this moment, a young man looked up, only to see a meteor smashing towards him. At this moment, someone was fishing, only to see a meteor fall into the water beside him. At this moment, there were even marine creatures gathered on the surface of the sea, waiting for the meteor to fall from the sky. Han Fei didn't intend to distribute all the supreme-grade spirit stones to human beings. If human beings became stronger, without enough stepping stones, how could they really grow? Therefore, even if a large part of the supreme-grade spirit stones were taken by marine creatures, it was actually improving the overall strength of the yin-yang heaven in a disguised way. Anyway, the moment Han Fei threw the treasures, the entire yin-yang heaven went crazy. In the forest of terror, the venerables were speechless. Zi Luo exclaimed, 20 million supreme-grade spirit stones. Is the Human King crazy? Qian Long asked, with so many supreme-grade spirit stones, it should be enough to create a king, right? The Sea clan replied, if he can pass the heavenly tribulation, it should be possible. Zi Luo, are you sure? Zi Luo shook her head slightly. I dare not. At this moment, when many people were looking around, trying to find the nearest supreme-grade spirit stone, Han Fei said, the second thing, the yin-yang heaven is about to welcome a second heavenly tribulation expert. His name is Tang Yan, and he will undergo the heavenly tribulation outside the scattered stars island tomorrow. Everyone can come and watch the heavenly tribulation. What? It's only been 10 years, and another expert is going to undergo the heavenly tribulation? Tang Yen. Who is Tang Yen? No matter who it is, we humans are now short of kings. As long as someone becomes a king, it's always a good thing. I wonder if he can survive the heavenly tribulation tomorrow. Last time, when a human king underwent the heavenly tribulation, the terrifying scene was really unimaginable. Someone said, in fact, on the Shuemu heaven, it is said that 2 kings have succeeded in transcending the heavenly tribulation. Now, on the Shuemu heaven's side, it is said that there are 3 kings. Our yin-yang heaven currently only has 1 human king, which is obviously not enough. Now that the human king is going to the outer domain, we naturally need a king to continue to guard the yin-yang heaven. This second thing also caused a heated discussion. However, everyone was basically scrambling and searching for top-grade spirit stones. After all, things like sea expansion and heavenly tribulation had nothing to do with most people. Most people just wanted to take a small step forward in their strength, and then another small step forward. Most people couldn't even see the heavenly tribulation of a king. Han Fei just casually mentioned Tang Yan's heavenly tribulation. Han Fei believed that there was no possibility of Tang Yan failing. After all, he had experienced 2 king heavenly tribulations. This time, Han Fei would be watching. There was no way he would fail. In fact, the loss of soul connection with Tang Gu actually had a great impact on Tang Yan, and Han Fei actually compensated Tang Yan. Of course, Han Fei didn't tell Tang Gu about this. Of course, even if Tang Yan didn't fail, he would have no chance to reincarnate in the future. This time, it should be his limit. However, this guy's combat power was not to be underestimated. A guy who could pass the heavenly tribulation under the eye of the great path 3 times in a row and almost succeeded, this kind of person couldn't be weak after becoming a king. Han Fei paused and continued, the third thing, I will preach at the Empyrean waterfall on the Scattered Stars Island in 3 days. All the peak-level explorers and above can participate in the selection. Only 10,000 people will be selected. Hiss, preach. Among some ordinary cultivators, someone sighed. Unfortunately, only peak-level explorers can have a chance to listen to it. Someone said, I'm afraid ordinary people can't understand a king's lecture. Someone said regretfully, even if we can't understand it, we still want to go and listen. Especially on the Scattered Stars Island, someone grinned and said, who cares? Let's go and listen in groups. We can just sit far away. It doesn't matter whether we can understand it or not. What matters is that we can listen to the king's lecture. Someone echoed, yes, let's go together. But for now, let's go find ultra-quality spiritual stones. Although Han Fei's preaching also caused a stir, the most direct treasures like ultra-quality spiritual stones were everyone's first pursuit. On the sea, at this moment, whether it was the ordinary fishery, the level 1 fishery, the level 2 fishery, the level 3 fishery, or outside the Scattered Stars Island, people were crazily forming groups. Because where the fish gathered, there must be ultra-quality spiritual stones. Perhaps an ultimate grade spirit stone was nothing, but it was something with 1,000,000 points of spiritual energy. After the popularization of information, most people had only heard of it but had never seen it. However, the gathering of the fish also represented a crisis, an omen of danger. Han Fei didn't help people avoid this danger. Everyone had walked out of life and death battles. Although he wanted to lead the human race to become stronger, no one could become stronger without experiencing any battles and experiences. This time, in the competition for resources and treasures, many people might die. However, many people would inevitably rise. Besides, this could stimulate people's blood. The top 10 treasures would probably be very popular for at least a few years. After the announcement of the 3 things, Han Fei's voice disappeared from the sky. At this moment, fishing boats were everywhere on the Scattered Stars Island. And Han Fei appeared in the 9-palace secret realm of the level 3 fishery. In the past few years, Han Fei came almost every year. The divine sun had been moved away by Han Fei. At present, the divine sun was arranged to be outside the Scattered Stars Island, at the top of the spiritual plant island. Han Fei had told the heavenly vine and the nine-headed snake grass to take good care of the divine sun. In the Nine-Palace secret realm, the water fairy had already eaten up this space. In the center of the lake, there was a green lotus blooming quietly. And on the green lotus, a young girl was sitting cross-legged. The girl was wearing a green dress, with shoulders as smooth as jade and a slim waist. Her neck was long and her white teeth were exposed. Realizing Han Fei's arrival, the girl directly opened her eyes and said, "Master, you're here." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Xian, I'm here today to let you out. Your strength has already reached the level of a peak-level hanging fisher. It's time to go out and gain experience." The girl suddenly jumped up and said in surprise, "Really? Can I really go out?" Han Fei smiled and said, "Of course. But remember, from the moment you go out, I won't care about you anymore. You must remember that you are a green lotus, and you have to walk a path that no one has ever walked before and no one will follow. Don't be in a hurry to cultivate. Compared with comprehending the Great Tao, cultivation is actually a very simple thing. Do you remember?" The girl obviously didn't understand much. She looked aggrieved. "Master, if I go out, you won't care about me anymore?" Han Fei said, "I also have to continue to pursue my own great Tao. There are legends about me in the outside world. When you go out, you will eventually know them." "Okay." The girl suddenly said, "Master, what's your name? Otherwise, how can I know who you are?" Han Fei grinned. "My name is Han Fei." Chapter 1892. The next day. The Scattered Stars Island was crowded with people. Outside the Scattered Stars Island, strong masters gathered. This was the first time that Tang Yen really showed up in front of people. At this moment, he and Han Fei were standing on the back of the cloud whale. Tang Yen said, "My heavenly tribulation should be much worse than yours." "That's still a heavenly tribulation. Someone must guard the yin-yang heaven when I go to the chaotic ocean. I don't trust Chao Tianji." Tang Yen couldn't help but smile. "You think I can trust him? After all, you used to be the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island. Let's not talk about how he became the supreme commander. You used to be one, didn't you?" Tang Yen smiled slightly. "If you succeed in this tribulation, I will help you guard the yin-yang heaven. If the chaotic ocean is really as terrible as you say, you should leave some resources for Chao Tianji. After all, he is also a member of the yin-yang heaven. You can also take care of the purple radish in the Forest of Terror. At least, if the cage is broken, we should all have the same fate. I know what I'm doing. You'd better survive this tribulation first. By the way, your identity should be revealed. The power of faith will be of some help to the tribulation." Then Han Fei disappeared on the cloud whale. On the other side, where the masters were watching the battle, Han Fei looked at Xue Shenqi and nodded slightly. Xue Shenqi turned his hand and the sky-hanging mirror appeared. All of a sudden, the canopy in the sky bloomed. Everyone on the Scattered Stars Island immediately saw a middle-aged man standing on the cloud whale. Many people were surprised. "Huh? The cloud whale? Why is the cloud whale there? The cloud whale is not strong. Why doesn't it go away? Look, there's someone on the back of the cloud whale. Is it that Tang Yen? Who the hell is this person? Why does he take the cloud whale with him?" Suddenly, the huge cloud whale turned into a ray of light and directly disappeared between Tang Yen's eyebrows. Seeing this scene, countless people on the Scattered Stars Island were shocked. Damn, the cloud whale turns out to be his spiritual beast. It turns out that this strong man is the master of the cloud whale. No wonder. Too many people have suspected the identity of the cloud whale. It was as if this was the only one in the world. I didn't expect it to be the spiritual beast of a quasi-monarch. So, it's him. Everyone on the Scattered Stars Island knows about the cloud whale. It has also helped us a lot. I don't know how many people have come to the Scattered Stars Island. If it's this one, I'll bless him with all my heart. Tribulation is coming. After pondering for a moment, Tang Yen knew that it was time to start. Sooner or later, he would have to face this tribulation. He had already gone through 3 tribulations. If he still failed, then the heavens would punish him. Tang Yan's tribulation cloud was much smaller than Han Fei's. Because the spiritual qi in the yin-yang sky was relatively thin, the coverage was less than 5,000 miles. However, Tang Yan's tribulation this time was different from Han Fei's. When Han Fei was going through the tribulation, the quality of the spiritual energy in the yin-yang heaven was far less than this. Therefore, the terrifying scene of the lightning tribulation covering a radius of 100,000 li from time to time could not be replicated. Boom, 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 Tang Yen resisted the 3 lightning bolts in a row with his body alone. Someone exclaimed, "Is Tang Yen going to learn from the human king? Is he going to overcome the heavenly tribulation with his body?" Someone said, "Even if he does, the level of the heavenly tribulation is different." When the human king was going through the tribulation cloud spanned hundreds of thousands of kilometers, and the whole world was dark. Besides, the heavenly tribulation turned purple from the second one, and in the end, it became a line between the sky and the earth. This is simply incomparable. Someone sneered. No matter how incomparable, it's still a king's tribulation. Do you think those who can pass the king's tribulation are simple? Boom. Boom. During the 5th heavenly tribulation, Tang Yen began to use the resources he had accumulated. After thousands of years, Tang Yen had accumulated a lot of spiritual fruits and earth vein essence, and he hadn't used the remaining power of faith. He successfully passed through 5 or 6 heavenly tribulations. After the 7th heavenly tribulation, Tang Yen was badly mutilated. And his heavenly tribulation just showed signs of turning lavender. Tang Yen crushed a jade slip and saw a heavenly awakening divine technique descend. In an instant, the healing radiance healed the injuries on the surface of his body. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Tang Yen took out 999 stone pillars. This was the array he had prepared for himself. Boom! Under the 8th wave of the heavenly tribulation, the stone pillars formed a picture of 1,000 stars above his head. It looked like a group of twinkling stars. Many people were also surprised. However, the speed at which those stone pillars broke was also very fast. It took Tang Yen a lot of time and effort to build this peerless array. Under the 8th heavenly tribulation, only 3 pillars were left. And they were all covered with cracks. But at this moment, Tang Yen smiled. Because the heavenly awakening divine technique had completely healed him. After the 8th heavenly tribulation, Tang Yen roared, and a huge bone whale appeared in the void. This was the corpse of the cloud whale that he suspected to be a king. When the 9th heavenly tribulation fell, the corpse of the cloud whale soared into the sky. Tang Yen held the sea-quelling bizarre saber and gathered power crazily. Seeing the corpse of the cloud whale being blasted into pieces, it had been more than 3 minutes, almost 4 minutes. Tang Yan's saber slashed at the lightning tribulation. Unfortunately, with a cracking sound, a crack appeared on Tang Yan's long saber. The power of the saber was completely blasted away. However, under the attack of the lavender lightning tribulation, a coiling dragon array suddenly rose. This was the top defense array that Han Fei had set up. As long as Tang Yen didn't try to withstand all the heavenly tribulations with his body like Han Fei naturally had some means to help him. Anyway, at the moment when the coiling dragon array collapsed, although a trace of the heavenly tribulation fell on Tang Yen. Apart from almost collapsing his body, it couldn't really kill him. In the sky, the tribulation clouds were slowly dispersing. Tang Yan's broken body was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. He had become a king. How could such a small injury be fatal? At this moment, Han Fei said, "Congratulations, Tang Yen, for successfully passing the king tribulation. Congratulations, the yin-yang heaven has welcomed a second king." As soon as Han Fei spoke, many people rushed to shout. "Congratulations, King Tang, for successfully passing the tribulation. Congratulations, the human race's second king. Congratulations, the yin-yang heaven had welcomed a second king. In fact, most people were just envious. However, at least this proved one thing: now the yin-yang heaven could become a king. Countless people made up their minds to cultivate heart at this moment. Once they became a king, they would live for 10,000 years. They could roam freely in the 9 heavens and 10 earths. This was the greatest pursuit of a cultivator. At this moment, this road had been cleared. Who wouldn't be envious? Because they had been notified in advance, there were actually many people who came to watch the battle this time. The Life Queen, Jing, Xiong Chaoshui. The 3 kings of the Shuemu heaven were also here at this moment. In fact, all the venerables of the Demon Beast Alliance, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, and the Immortal City had already come. After all, it was definitely not a bad idea to watch the King Tribulation. Who didn't want to become a king if they could become a venerable? When Xiong Chaoshui and Jing Er transcended their tribulations, Han Fei also helped, and Tang Yan and the others watched. Water Immortal said, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist Tang Yan. You've become a king." Xiong Chaoshui, fellow Taoist Tang Yan, your tribulation transcendence is much easier than mine. Jing Er, congratulations, fellow Taoist Tang Yan. Tang Yan had already stabilized his strength slightly. While feeling the changes in his body, he smiled at the crowd. After all, I have accumulated for 1,000 years, so I have some capital. However, he still had to thank Han Fei. The sea-quelling bizarre treasures and the coiling dragon array that you helped me build are indispensable. Xiong Chaoshui muttered, I still think that Brother Niu is more intimate. Ma Yuhun said, Golden Tiger and I also want to transcend the tribulation. Right now, the power of the great Tao on Shuemu Tian's side was not enough. The yin-yang sky. Before Ma Yuhun finished speaking, Chao Tianji said, Fellow Taoist Ma, our human race still lacks a king. I estimate that in another 3 years, I will also undergo the tribulation. Everyone sighed in their hearts. When it came to transcending the tribulation, who would be willing to give way? Zi Luo and Si Bamboo were also thinking that it might not be realistic to compete with Chao Tianji. However, if there was another opportunity, they would definitely announce it as soon as possible. When the cage released more spiritual energy, they might still have a chance. Han Fei said, Don't worry, everyone. You have all been oppressed by the heavenly Tao here for too long. In fact, whether it is talent or ability, you are not weak. I estimate that the yin-yang sky can only support the birth of one more king within 10 years. However, within 10 years, the cage can't be broken. Mu Wuhua asked, If you leave this place, will you trigger the cage? Han Fei said, I don't know. Of course, I won't trigger it if I can. However, whether I trigger it or not, I must go on this trip to the chaotic ocean. This is our only hope. Xiong Chaoshui nodded. I agree with Han Fei. If there are really so many kings and emperors in the chaotic ocean, then even if we become kings, it won't be a big deal. Jing Er suggested, how about we all go? Han Fei shook his head. No need. What can you do even if you go? It's impossible for you to become emperors in a short time. The day after tomorrow, I will preach and select some people to go out. My purpose of selecting people is that these people have the potential to grow quickly. Moreover, these people have to be prepared to die. I can't guarantee everyone's life. How many can rise after this time? I don't know myself. Tang Yan said, cultivation should be like this. Who wants to succeed but doesn't want to take risks? The Life Queen said, when you go out this time, you should try to find those missing immortal palaces. Only with enough allies can we establish a foothold in the outside world. Han Fei nodded slightly. That's my plan too. Chapter 1893. On this day, strong masters gathered on the Scattered Stars Island. Within 100 kilometers of the Empyrean waterfall, no one was allowed to enter. The demonic plants of the Forest of Horrors, the ferocious beasts of the Demon Beast Alliance, the experts of the Immortal City, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, and the Yin-Yang Heaven all came. There were a total of 542 Exalt Realm experts amongst the group that had come. And there were as many as 10,000 half-venerables. Han Fei didn't restrict other races from attending this sermon. People from the Demon Beast Alliance, the Immortal City, and the Forest of Horrors were also treated fairly. In fact, Han Fei only selected relatively stable people this time, and he didn't let many people who were about to make a breakthrough come. After all, his wealth was limited. If a super large-scale breakthrough happened, Han Fei wouldn't be able to afford the consumption of resources. This time, the resources that Han Fei got from the chaotic Azure Sea had almost been consumed. For this sermon, Han Fei and Xia Shaochan had taken out almost all of their wealth. For this, the hexagon starfish was so sad that he had to make a breakthrough quickly and try his best to devour these ultra-quality spiritual stones. At this moment, the Scattered Stars Island was surrounded by layers of guards. 100 kilometers away, although it was also surrounded by people, Han Fei couldn't help. At this moment, Han Fei was sitting cross-legged on the Empyrean waterfall. Below him, the closest ones were the Insect King, Golden Tiger, Ma Yuhan, Zi Luo, Qianlong, Chen Xiang, Chen Sanbai, Chao Tianji, and so on. Of course, everyone from the Thug Academy was the closest to Han Fei and sat behind him. They were less than a kilometer away from him. The closer they were to the periphery, the weaker they were. Han Fei said, everyone, I mean everyone who is here today. Take out all the spiritual energy resources you have. If everything goes well, many people will become venerables or become half-venerables after my sermon. So, in order to make this place rich in spiritual energy, you'd better take out all your resources. Many people become venerables. Many people looked at each other in bewilderment. It was said that only those who had fought more and accumulated enough resources could make a breakthrough. They had never heard that one could make a breakthrough while listening to someone else's sermon. However, Han Fei, the human sovereign personage, was very famous. It was rumored to be miraculous. Xiong Chaoshui even said that Han Fei was the strongest king of the Waterwood Heaven and the Yin-Yang Heaven. Even if he, Jing, and Mu Wuhua joined forces, they would still not be a match for him. Of course, Xiong Chaoshui's words were only known by some people. Most people didn't know. The few people who knew about it were the supremacies who had just arrived. At this moment, as soon as Han Fei finished speaking, people like Golden Tiger had already taken out their resources. Jin Hu said to Jiao Mengyue, I asked Lao Xiong and guess what? He said he didn't know how to preach at all, but Han Fei did. So, whoever hesitates now is a fool. Zi Luo and the others were also transmitting their voices to each other, don't be stingy. This was an opportunity, so he had to take it all out. If I can advance, the great Tao is within reach. Behind him. Without Han Fei saying anything, Old Bai took out 1,000,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones from his treasury and spread them on the ground, not caring about other people's eyes at all. No matter what, Han Fei was from his family. There were only a few dozen seedlings in the Thug Academy. If he didn't use the resources now, when would he? Swish, swish at this time, Yin, Nian, and Yi Xian arrived late. Yin said, that's what you get for trying to touch a venerable in the cage. You almost made a big mistake. Nian said, but we made it. At least the 7 of us hunted a turtle at the beginner venerable level. Congratulations. Yi Xian asked, Nian, are you going to make a breakthrough this time? Nian said, Yin, and I have been holding back for a long time just to go out with you. Gu Qi said, okay, hurry up and take a seat. Senior brother is about to start. Swish suddenly, 1,000 ultra-quality divine weapons floated above Han Fei's head. The brilliance of the ultra-quality divine weapons rose slowly from the Empyrean waterfall, not avoiding everyone's eyes. Wow, am I seeing this right? Are they all ultra-quality divine weapons? Oh my god, the human king is really generous. Is he going to give out ultra-quality divine weapons? Give out ultra-quality divine weapons? How can you think of that? There are only 1,000 ultra-quality divine weapons. Do you think you can get them? That's true. There are a total of 542 venerable powerhouses here today. Even if we want to give them out, we should give them to these people first. Han Fei said leisurely, today, I promise that whether it is the Yin-Yang Heaven, the Waterwood Heaven, the Forest of Horrors, or the Demon Beast Alliance, anyone who reaches the venerable level will be given an ultra-quality divine weapon for free. Gulp, my guess is indeed correct. That is to say, all venerable powerhouses will receive an ultra-quality divine weapon for free. I just want to know what to do with the rest of the ultra-quality divine weapons. Han Fei immediately said, there are 1,000 ultra-quality divine weapons here. Even if each venerable has one, there are still 458 left. I will give these ultra-quality divine weapons to General Shueishenqi, the commander of the Scattered Stars Island. In the future, if someone becomes a venerable first in the ordinary Waterwood Heaven and the Yin-Yang Heaven, they can come to get an ultra-quality divine weapon. Outside the venue, there was an uproar. An ultra-quality divine weapon for free? Only the human king can be so extravagant. No, I'm also an advanced explorer now. Why can't I have a try? More than 400. Doesn't it mean that all explorers have a high chance of reaching the explorer realm? Someone wondered, isn't it a bit unfair, His Majesty? Why can only peak-level explorers really listen to the sermon? We can only watch from the sidelines. Someone sneered. Do you know how many powerhouses below the peak-level explorer realm are there? The Demon Beast Alliance, the Immortal City, the Forest of Horrors, and millions of explorers. If all of them come, even if the probability is only 1 in 10,000, how many resources do you think His Majesty will provide for them to make a breakthrough? Someone echoed, that's right. It's really easy to talk. His Majesty is willing to give everything away. If he can really make millions of explorers reach the venerable level, do you think he will be stingy? It's because the conditions don't allow it, okay? Those ultra-quality divine weapons were all inserted on the cliff of the Empyrean waterfall. Han Fei said, in 10 minutes, the sermon will begin. Everyone, hold your breath and listen carefully. In the distance, Tang Yan, Xiong Chaoshui, Jing, and Water Deity were all here. Although they were kings, they also wanted to hear Han Fei's so-called sermon. What kind of sermon was it? If the sermon was useful, wouldn't it be better for them to learn from him in the future? 10 minutes later, the audience fell silent. Han Fei said, what is the Great Way? What is the Great Way? Is the Great Way determined the Great Way, or is the Great Way leading to the Great Way? We have to start with the disassembly of spiritual energy. When Han Fei talked about the disassembly of spiritual energy, a hypnotic voice seemed to come. Even the half-king realm experts felt that their eyes were blurred, and their ears were buzzing. They couldn't hear anything. Not only that, but even the Life Queen and the others also revealed astonished expressions. Jing, couldn't help but exclaim, Your Majesty, can you hear what he said? Why is there a buzzing in my ears? The Life Queen shook her head slightly. I can't hear it clearly. It's vaguely related to the disassembly of spiritual energy. Tang Yan nodded. I feel it too. This should be because of his profound understanding of the Great Way. Although this Great Way can be taught in words, it's extremely difficult to understand it. Xiong Chaoshui let out a long breath. I thought I was the only one who couldn't hear it clearly. It turns out that you didn't hear it clearly. However, Han Fei's understanding of the Great Way is definitely stronger than ours. Back then, we also saw the scene when he transcended the tribulation. Not to mention anything else, I would have been struck to death by his heavenly tribulation in less than 5 strikes. Jing nodded. That seems to make sense. I don't even know how he made it through it. The Life Queen said, Stop talking nonsense. I feel that my Tao has been touched. The Great Way that Han Fei preaches should be of great benefit to us. Listen carefully. Originally, the Life Queen and the others just came to learn how to preach, but it turned out that they were listening to a lecture. The Life Queen couldn't help but be speechless. Now Han Fei was more like her senior brother. After the first hour of Han Fei's sermon, in the crowd, a beginner venerable began to break through. However, that beginner venerable seemed to be breaking through unconsciously. His body's instincts were guiding him to absorb his own resources. After another half an hour, a person broke through to the venerable realm, and a spiritual energy storm swept over. 100 kilometers away, many people heard it. Those who were close seemed to be able to hear it. However, when the sound fell into their ears, no matter how hard they tried to listen, they couldn't hear it clearly. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Look, a spiritual energy storm is forming. Someone has broken through." Wow! So fast. Did he break through just like that? Is this the sermon of a king? No, this is the sermon of a human king. From the beginning of the second spiritual energy storm, almost every hour and a half, someone would break through. 2 hours later, the total number of people who had broken through had reached 69. Half a day later, the total number of people who had broken through had reached 83. Han Fei roughly understood that some people should have been in place, so they directly broke through after comprehending a little. Most of these people made breakthroughs within 2 hours. The frequency of breakthroughs later became lower and lower. Until a day later, a total of 101 people broke through and joined the venerable realm. Among them, 66 people were originally venerables. Their breakthroughs were only small breakthroughs. And the remaining 35 people directly broke through from the demi-venerable realm to the venerable realm. As for the breakthroughs at smaller levels, Han Fei didn't count them. There were about 500 people. Seeing this number, Han Fei sighed slightly in his heart. Only the first time would be very effective when preaching. From the second time onward, the effect was very slow. In the past 10 years, in his origin sea, he had preached to Xia Shaochan, Master Hexagon, and Zhang Xuanyu countless times. He preached tirelessly and forced all of them to have a spiritual energy decomposition rate of more than 90%. Xia Shaochan and Hexagon Starfish even reached as high as 98%. However, even so, there was still one last point that he hadn't completely comprehended. Han Fei realized that after all, his understanding was not enough. If he had the level of eldest senior brother, he might only need one time to explain it to them. Han Fei said, "You still need to work hard for this sermon. First." Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1894. Han Fei's sermon shocked countless experts of the yin-yang heaven and the water-wood heaven. After just one lecture, more than 600 people had made breakthroughs of varying degrees. The most terrifying thing was that in one lecture, 35 venerables were born. Not to mention anything else, these 35 venerables' admiration for Han Fei could be described as fanatical. One of them even almost cried with joy. "I've cultivated hard for 800 years, but I failed to comprehend the last threshold. But in the lecture, my mind was clear and I naturally made a breakthrough. The sovereign personage is my master for a lifetime." Most people's breakthroughs were between peak-level explorers and half-level venerables. These people were shocked. It was as if they had just taken a nap. But when they woke up, they were already half-level venerables. How could there be such a good thing in this world? If possible, they really hoped that Han Fei would give another sermon. Unfortunately, Han Fei left directly, which made many people sigh. Everyone knew that Han Fei was going out to find a way to survive for the human race. Everyone's heart was heavy. Although they all hoped that Han Fei would stay in the yin-yang heaven and give lectures when he was free. However, they knew that Han Fei had more important things to do, so no one asked him to stay. The students of the Thug Academy, the Life Queen, and the others came one after another. Han Fei certainly knew their intentions. So, before they spoke, Han Fei said, "It's not that I don't want to teach you, but that I can't. The rules of the heavenly Tao restrict me. Some things can only be understood, not taught." Xiong Chaoshui heaved a long sigh. "I knew it. There must be a reason why we can't understand. If it's the rules of the heavenly Tao, then there's nothing we can do. Jing'er asked, why do the rules of the heavenly Tao restrict everything? Han Fei was amused. It's not that they don't care about everything, but if this kind of thing can be taught directly, how can there be weak people in this world? If it can be taught, then wouldn't there be a lot of strong people everywhere? Tang Yen nodded slightly. That makes sense. Some things can only be obtained in the dark. However, we want to know if this has anything to do with the disintegration rate of spiritual energy. Seeing Han Fei nod slightly, they all looked enlightened. Although they didn't understand, they vaguely had a feeling that it seemed to have something to do with the disintegration rate of spiritual energy. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai came from the backyard of the Thug Academy. Seeing the kings, she bowed slightly. Luo Xiaobai didn't speak either, but her meaning was obvious. We have something to discuss. Tang Yen said, I'm leaving. I'll keep an eye on Yin Yang Heaven while you're gone. Han Fei threw a sun-moon shell to Tang Yen and said, if Chao Tianji wants to make a breakthrough, this is the only thing I can give him now. Most of my resources have already been used up. The corner of Tang Yan's mouth twitched. I thought you'd run out of energy long ago, Xiong Chaoshui chuckled. Brother Han, I'll be going back first. I'll be waiting for you. Wait a minute, old bear, I want a few people from you. I'm going to take them out. Xiong Chaoshui was shocked. Who is it? I'll go get them now. Han Fei waved his hand with a smile and pointed at Xiong Chaoshui. Han Fei said, although many people have guessed it, try to keep a low profile. Xiong Chaoshui understood. Don't worry. I'm leaving. After Tang Yen and Xiong Chaoshui left, Han Fei saw that the Life Queen was still there, so he said with a smile, Junior sister, what's the matter? The Life Queen said lightly, what do you think, senior brother? Jing'er looked at the Life Queen and then at Han Fei, thinking, when did Her Majesty and Han Fei become senior brother and junior sister? Even Luo Xiaobai was a little puzzled by this question. However, neither of them seemed to be prepared to explain. Han Fei said, teacher is here. If you pay attention, it shouldn't be difficult to find her. In the next few years, with her strength, it should be easy for her to rise. Just wait. The Life Queen raised her eyebrows. You're not going to take her out of Yin Yang Heaven? Han Fei smiled slightly and said, she still needs time to grow and accumulate, and I will definitely come back. If I don't come back in 22 to 30 years, it will very likely mean that I have died. The Life Queen and Jing'er's expressions changed slightly. What do you mean? Why 22 to 30 years? Han Fei shrugged. It's hard for me to explain. I probably need to go through a dangerous adventure. If something goes wrong in the cage before 22 years, then I will definitely come back. The Life Queen was shocked. With Han Fei's current strength, he said that it was a dangerous adventure. Then how dangerous would this so-called adventure be? After hearing the news that the water fairy had been born, the Life Queen was slightly relieved and then said, in that case, Jing'er and I will leave first. Jing'er said, Han Fei, survive. Han Fei smiled and said, I will. By the way, remember to send people here. As he spoke, Han Fei selected a few people for Jing'er and the Life Queen. After sending these people away, Luo Xiaobai looked at Han Fei in surprise. A dangerous adventure? Han Fei said, I'll tell you about this when you become half a king. Luo Xiaobai frowned. Must I be half a king? Han Fei said, yes. Luo Xiaobai nodded slightly. She probably understood the degree of danger involved. According to the time Han Fei just said, she roughly knew that this adventure would take place in 22 years. Luo Xiaobai said, I came to you for something else. Xiao Chan said that when you came back, you were attacked by a strong master. How strong is the master? Since they know the location of the Yin Yang Heaven, will they be waiting outside to attack you? Han Fei said, I can't rule out this possibility. But my current strength is not comparable to that of the past. If an ordinary king dares to attack me again, they will pay a corresponding price. Luo Xiaobai asked, what if it's not an ordinary king? Han Fei pondered and said, at least, I can escape safely. Han Fei's heart did a flip. If it was not a king but an emperor, this would indeed be a problem. However, Han Fei thought, emperors shouldn't be so free. Would an emperor stay in the savage abyss and wait for a half-king? Besides, even if they could predict that he would come back to transcend the tribulation and become a king, they wouldn't know his specific strength after becoming a king, would they? At least, even he wouldn't believe that a king who had just become a king could be compared with those old kings. Of course, even if Han Fei confirmed what he said, he also knew that Luo Xiaobai's reminder was right. In any case, he had to leave a way out for himself. Han Fei said, when the time comes, if there is really a danger that I can't resist, I can return to the Yin-Yang heaven. I have a divine power. Even if the creator of the heaven comes in person, he can't kill me. Luo Xiaobai nodded slightly. That's good. Maybe you can understand it in a different way. At your current level, you are more important than the entire Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven, and more important than the Thug Academy. If it is necessary, you can't die even if you have to give up. Han Fei grinned and couldn't help but tease her. Marshal Luo, if your words are known by those who worship you on the Scattered Stars Island, what will they think? Luo Xiaobai smiled slightly. They won't know. After a moment, Xia Shaochan returned with a total of 9 people. When these people saw Han Fei, they all cupped their fists. Greetings, human king. Han Fei nodded slightly. Yes. You should know why I asked you to come this time. The outside world is extremely dangerous. If you go out with my identity, you will most likely die. Are you willing to go with me? Among these people, the only one Han Fei knew was Qin Xiang. She took the lead and said, even human king has to leave this world to save the human race. We are not afraid of death. The others also echoed, yes, so what if there is a slim chance of survival? We swear to follow human king to the death. Han Fei nodded slightly. Okay, then you can wait here for a while. When everyone is here, we'll set off. In the backyard, Old Bai and Old Jiang were admonishing Wang Dashui and the others. Old Bai said, now, your strength is not very strong. However, this is not a problem of your talent, but every time there is a heavenly talent, there will be a rising dragon. You're still not close to Han Fei. This time, you're the weakest batch. You must be careful in the outside world. You can't relax just because you are one of us. Old Jiang said, but don't be afraid of trouble, Han Fei. Let me tell you, you are from the Pure Yang sect, so you will have special treatment. Chu Linyuan said, principles, I know, okay. How many times have I told you? Old Bai said, you have to listen to me. The outside world is dangerous. I don't think I need to tell you. Do you really think it will be as simple as Han Fei said? Nonsense. He must have narrowly escaped with his life. It's just that he says it's easy. In the distance, Xia Shaochan chuckled. See, Principal knows you very well. Han Fei smiled and said, fine. But Principal is right. As a member of the Pure Yang sect, you will indeed have special treatment. On the other side, Yi Xian cried and shouted, Principal, we want to go too. Principal. I can't not see my husband. I will die. Su Daiji said, Principal, I will go too. Zhang Xuanyu said with a black face, shut up. Do you think you can go to such a place? Old Bai scolded, just stay here. What else can you do except cause trouble for your senior brother when you go out? At this time, Han Fei's voice came leisurely. Hey! Principal, go if you want to. The few of them were not weak. They were all explorers. I will make them regret going to the chaotic sea. However, Old Bai frowned and said to Han Fei via voice transmission, these guys are the seedlings of our academy. Han Fei responded, don't worry, we still have people outside. If we can't do it, I have someone else to ask. Old Bai wondered, someone else? Who is it? Han Fei replied, the Lunar Academy. Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1895. About 2 hours later, Xiong Chaoshui, Jing, and Zi Luo personally led a small group of people to the Thug Academy. There were not many people who were selected by Han Fei, only 32 in total. In addition to Han Fei's team, Zhang Xuanyu's team, Yi Shiyan's team, Wang Dashuai's team, Chu Jinan and Ling Yuan's team, the number had reached 50. Among them, Jiao Mengyue from the Demon Beast Alliance, Chen Xiang from the human race's Undying City, Void Vine from the Terror Forest, Insect King and Green Bat from the Waterwood Sky. At this moment, everyone gathered at the Thug Academy. Now, you still have a chance to leave. Once we reach the chaotic vast sea, there will be no turning back. Jiao Mengyue said, I've stayed in the cage long enough. If I don't become a king, I won't return. Mountain Cat Feigning said, since I came, I never thought I could come back alive. Although the Void Vine was a little evasive, Han Fei didn't ask for its opinion. Needless to say, the usefulness of the Void Vine was not small. This fellow was proficient in the spatial Grand Dao, so he was the most suitable for scouting and tracking. As for the Insect King and the others, they were all his old friends. Han Fei nodded slightly, and the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared around him. Han Fei said, open your mind and enter my sea-quelling painting. After Xia Shaochan and Yin, entered the array, Han Fei turned around and cupped his hands at Old Bai and Old Jiang. President, I'm leaving. Old Jiang snorted. You've already become a king. It'll be a great loss if you die outside. Han Fei grinned. Rest assured. The person who can take me in hasn't been born yet. After Han Fei left, Old Jiang immediately said, Old Bai, what did this brat say to you just now? Why did you agree so quickly? The white-haired old man said lightly, he found Lunar Academy. Hengduan Mountain Range. Han Fei came back here again and jumped down without hesitation. Unlike when he was attacked by the kings when he came back, Han Fei had really been cultivating hard in the past 10 years. He wasn't cultivating the stainless profound body, but rather the void flame refining technique. In addition to his own cultivation, Han Fei was also domesticating mantis shrimp and the others. This was also the fundamental reason why Han Fei was willing to hibernate in the yin-yang heaven for decades. That was because his growth was simply too fast, while Little Black, Little White, and the others were simply too weak. Over the years, Han Fei saw that they had all become venerables, and the King Sparrow had reached the terrifying level of an advanced venerable. If they didn't leave now, they wouldn't have much room to grow in the yin-yang sky. The one with the lowest level was Little Fatty. It had reached level 81 and wasn't considered a novice anymore. It was time to go out. Half a day later, it was still the yin-yang millstone. At this moment, the yin-yang millstone was still absorbing endless energy and spirit chi from the outside world. Han Fei felt that he was being pulled by a huge force. He immediately cast the Gemini Divine Incantation. When he rushed out of the center of the millstone, he was ready. This time, he clearly felt that apart from the yin-yang heaven where he was, there were a total of 3 entrances. Among them, there was an entrance that was very mediocre, so mediocre that Han Fei almost didn't think it was a path. Han Fei roughly guessed that that path should be the so-called normal savage abyss. Ignoring these paths, Han Fei pointed with the nautical panorama in his hand. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly, and he said in a voice that only he could hear, I hope the strength of the hunter can be stronger. So that I can know how strong I am. The Savage Abyss. Since the Battle of the Emperors broke out 10 years ago, this place had become a forbidden area for cultivation. The berserk power of the Emperor caused this desolate place to become even more chaotic. A large amount of mysterious power of the Great Way was dissipating here. Even though the war had long been over, there were still some forces in the void that were colliding with each other. The impact of any invisible Daoist aura was not something that ordinary venerables could resist. However, even in such a desperate place, there were still people sitting cross-legged in this vortex wave, cultivating. One of them said, "Yu Meng, didn't you say that the emperors will be rotated every 10 years? Why hasn't our emperors come yet?" In the water mist, a leisurely voice rang out, "They should be here soon. I just don't know who will come. Anyway, the Avalon of 5 elements doesn't have to come anymore. When the Imperial Palace opens, even if Han Fei comes out, he won't be able to do anything." That's true. At least, it's impossible for the Yin-Yang Sky to explore the Imperial Palace. If they can't explore the Imperial Palace, no matter how talented Han Fei is, even if he can become a king, it's useless without a great opportunity. I'm afraid that the opportunities in the Yin-Yang Sky have already been destroyed by him. Bam! Suddenly, the two of them looked at the abyss. The void shook, and a massive amount of energy was sucked into the abyss in an instant. Yu Meng suddenly shouted, "Gong Zhan." The two of them appeared in the depths of the vortex with a swish, and standing in front of them was a familiar face that was devouring a massive amount of energy. Gong Zhan and Yu Meng were both shocked. Han Fei became a king. Both of them were appalled. It had only been 10 years, and this kid had become a king. Moreover, judging from the aura on this kid's body, he seemed to be quite strong. He was even stronger than they were when they were at the Sea Expansion realm. The two of them looked at each other and attacked almost at the same time without any delay. Behind Gong Zhan, the 5-colored light alls swooshed towards Han Fei. 5 elements death-seeking. Han Fei, you shouldn't have come back. You're alone. How can you resist all the kings? Since you've come to us, go to hell. Yu Meng's body directly disappeared from this world, and an invisible mist suddenly descended from the sky. However, Han Fei grinned and said lazily, as if he felt sorry, "Don't tell me that there are only 2 of you here. Humph. Go to hell." The 5 elements death-seeking alls were about to penetrate Han Fei in the blink of an eye. Han Fei stretched out 2 fingers, and the Tao Convergence sword burst out. Clang, 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 clang. None of the 5 light alls could shake the great Tao Coalescence sword. At most, it consumed half of the power here. Gong Zhan was shocked. This guy doesn't look so strong. How was it that a casual move was able to break one of his great techniques? With a thought from Gong Zhan, the 5 light alls returned and combined into one, turning into a long sword, trying to compete with the Tao Convergence sword. Seeing this scene, Han Fei didn't seem to care. Instead, Han Fei looked at the mist. In Han Fei's eyes, a new scene was created. This scene was the scene of his heavenly tribulation. Everything seemed real. Han Fei even saw that his body was full of cracks, panting, and his resources had been exhausted. Han Fei's face was solemn. When he saw a heavenly tribulation coming, he grinned. Gotcha. At the moment Yu Meng attacked, an invisible black shadow quietly appeared behind her. When Yu Meng saw the disdainful smile on Han Fei's lips, she couldn't help but be shocked. She didn't even have time to inform Gong Zhan. She immediately roared and pulled out a person from the void. Han Fei took a closer look. Isn't that me? What's Yu Meng's ability? The old turtle said, "That's your dream shadow, which has the power of your attack. This is their way of doing things. Just now, you were still caught by her." Han Fei's heart did a flip, and he saw his black mist body launch another Tao Convergence sword. That Menging actually performed the exact same Tao Coalescence sword. In an instant, a terrifying explosion was set off around Yu Meng. She was directly sent flying for thousands of kilometers. However, because this kind of power didn't fall on Yu Meng, it couldn't really hurt her. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yu Meng shouted, "Gong Zhan, he's just a clone." Gong Zhan had just resisted Han Fei's sword, and his hands were numb from the shock. At this moment, hearing Yu Meng's shout, he was shocked. A clone? At this time, Gong Zhan had no time to be shocked. If a clone was so strong, then how strong would Han Fei be after he fused with it? He couldn't even understand. It had only been 10 years. Even if Han Fei was more talented than ordinary kings, a clone shouldn't be so powerful, right? During the fight with the two, Han Fei had already tested it with the 9-palace ruler of Providence. The result of the test showed that it was a bad hexagram. This result made Han Fei fearless. That was why he dared to release the black mist body at the first moment. The only disadvantage of the Gemini divine technique was that the combat power of the Gemini was greatly weakened compared to the combat power of the real body. At this moment, the power of each Gemini was only about 80,000 waves. And Gong Zhan and Yu Meng were actually not weak. The Avalon of 5 elements was good at fighting, so Gong Zhan's basic strength was higher than that of his clone. Although Yu Meng practiced the Tao of entering dreams, her dream-weaving heaven was an inner domain immortal palace, and its strength was stronger than that of the outer domain. Even so, Han Fei didn't panic. He was only halfway there. However, this was just a probing attack. Who would take it seriously? Han Fei said, 5 elements, dream-weaving heaven, right? Do you know what will happen to you if you oppose me? Yu Meng shouted in a low voice, go. However, Han Fei sneered. Go? Do you think I'm giving you face? Suddenly, Gong Zhan and Yu Meng felt that Han Fei's momentum was soaring crazily. Yes, they could still resist Han Fei's attack just now. But now, the terrifying momentum that Han Fei emitted reminded them of the supermasters from the previous few immortal palaces. 5 elements heavenly pillar. 3 lives reincarnation. The two of them knew that if they ran at this moment, they would be in a very passive position. They needed to buy some time for themselves to escape. However, on Yu Meng's side, a flash of knife light shone between heaven and earth. Han Fei said leisurely, those who offend me, Han Fei, shall be killed. 3rd update. Please vote for me. This time, I'm going to make trouble. End of this chapter. Chapter 1896. Han Fei didn't plan to end things peacefully with the families of the 36 Xiantian realms this time. Han Fei didn't care about the 100 Demons clan, the Seabed Human clan, or the Mermaid royal family. The human race was fragmented, and each family ruled a region. The human race was divided into internal and external forces, which only showed that they were not united. In this case, he might as well start over. Han Fei might find it troublesome to build a place. However, overthrowing a force was Han Fei's forte. Yu Meng could summon one of Han Fei's shadows. However, she couldn't summon 8 or 10 of them. Seeing Han Fei's soaring momentum, Yu Meng didn't dare to hide anything anymore. Black mist shrouded her, essence blood burned, and a huge sea cuttlefish melted into her body. She suddenly waved a big pen in her hand. Han Fei seemed to see memory fragments turning into shield shadows to block him. He had to admit that few of the sea expansion realm experts in the chaotic ocean didn't have no trump cards. Yu Meng's strength was certainly not weak. Her strength was even stronger than Feng Xinlan, whom he had fought against previously. Now, she released all her strength. Although Han Fei wasn't afraid of her, he couldn't kill her with just a clone. Tisk, TSK. Since you still want to fight, I'll let you know why you're going to die. Twin in one. The white mist on Gong Zhan's side disappeared in an instant. And on Yu Meng's side, Han Fei appeared, and his momentum was completely different from before. Han Fei stretched out his 2 fingers again. This time, the Tao Convergence sword burst out, and Yu Meng couldn't resist it. Bam! However, Yu Meng's body directly exploded into pieces. Han Fei could feel that there were souls, essence blood, and broken flesh trying to be reborn. But these rebirths were just a cover. Outside of these, Han Fei sensed a mist, which seemed to be wrapped in a strange power, quietly leaving. However, since Han Fei had already made a move, how could he let Yu Meng run away? At the sea expansion realm, Han Fei stepped in the air, and ripples rolled and swept for thousands of kilometers. All the forces that were about to be reborn were trampled into pieces by Han Fei in an instant. Han Fei, on the other hand, condensed a giant hand and pinched the mist. Just as it was about to be crushed, a voice shouted in horror, Han Fei, there's no need to fight to the death. The dream weaver heaven can stand on the yin-yang heaven's side. Han Fei sneered. Do I need you to pick a side for me? Die. Rumble, in the blink of an eye, blood streaked across the sky. A king of a generation was killed on the spot in just a few minutes after facing Han Fei. Because Han Fei had just come to kill Yu Meng, Gong Zhan still escaped. However, Han Fei didn't care. It was just Gong Zhan. The monk could run, but the temple could not. If he wanted to kill this person, no one could save him. After strangling Yu Meng, Han Fei grabbed the Voyager King's myriad manifestations instrument and spun it rapidly. Then, Han Fei clawed at the void, broke through the void, and directly drilled into a misty sea of origin. In the origin sea, even if a strong master died, there was a great chance that he wouldn't be discovered. At some point in the future, it would reappear in a certain way. However, Han Fei was not an ordinary person. With the Voyager King's myriad manifestations instrument in hand, how could he let go of Yu Meng's origin sea? In this mist, Han Fei glanced around and found that the size of this origin sea was much smaller than he imagined. Han Fei thought that Yu Meng's origin sea would be at least thousands of kilometers long. However, it turned out that it was only more than 1,800 kilometers long. Moreover, it was irregular. For example, because his origin sea had been fused with Forge the Universe, it was now a circular area with a diameter of 12,000 kilometers. Compared with Yu Meng's, it was much larger. In addition, Han Fei had only seen the origin seas of the Water Deity and the Divine Prince. But even the Water Deity's origin sea was more than 3,000 kilometers long. How could Yu Meng's origin sea compare? Han Fei thought to himself, it seems that I overthought. It turns out that the origin sea of an ordinary king is really not very large. The old turtle couldn't help but be speechless. Of course. The origin sea is large either for special reasons, or because it has been cultivating for a long time and has been constantly fusing chaotic energy into it. Suddenly, Han Fei raised his head and saw a small vine extending into this space. Immediately afterward, a second, a third, and a fourth vine appeared. Who could it be if not the demon purification pot? Wow! The demon purification pot even eats other people's origin sea. Han Fei shrugged slightly. The chaotic energy entering the origin sea wouldn't decrease. It was just a kind of power that supported the origin sea itself. In the origin sea, the more chaotic energy was fused into it, the more lively the origin sea would be, like a natural world. When Han Fei was going through the tribulation, more than 5,000 wisps of chaotic energy were pressed into it. By logic, it was impossible for more than 5,000 wisps of chaotic energy to open up a origin sea with a radius of 6,000 kilometers. However, when the demon purification pot fused in, it immediately made the origin sea different. This time, the demon purification pot swallowed the chaotic energy like a whale, and Han Fei himself was dumbfounded. It seemed that the demon purification pot was eating the chaotic energy in other people's origin sea. It should be noted that the demon purification pot could stabilize the origin sea. In addition, a perfect origin sea could breed and store the power of the Great Path. Now, as the demon purification pot swallowed, Han Fei saw that the range of the origin sea began to shrink, and the mist became thicker. Han Fei scanned with his perception and caught a lot of treasures, including dozens of sun-moon shells. In the outside world, Gong Zhan was so scared that his face turned pale and his soul shivered. Wasn't Han Fei's growth a bit too abnormal? Yu Meng, dream-weaving sky, a powerhouse second only to Sha Zhimeng, died just like that. He didn't expect this at all. Gong Zhan even knew very well why Han Fei killed Yu Meng first. Because Yu Meng was more difficult to deal with. Besides, Dream-Weaving Sky was an inner domain immortal palace, which was beyond the reach of the barbaric abyss. However, he was different. The Avalon of 5 elements was in the outer domain. If he and Yu Meng exchanged identities, he might be the one who died today. No. I can't stay in the Avalon of 5 elements. At the same time, Wabuli of the Golden Crow Heaven and Hongyu of the Wild Corpse Heaven were on their way. It was tens of millions of miles away from here. However, when the weather changed, they were the two kings closest to the savage abyss. Therefore, they were shocked to discover that a king had fallen. Huabuli immediately shouted, "A king has fallen." What happened? Who died? Hongyu, something's not right. Yu Meng and Gong Zhan were guarding the barbaric abyss. If Martial Emperor City did not come, the 10 great pirate groups would not dare to come and get involved either. After all, robbing 2 kings was no easy task. Furthermore, kings had source seas. Who would hang a sun-moon shell on them for no reason and let others rob them? So, I'm afraid something happened to them. Huabuli, that shouldn't be the case. Only 10 years have passed. Let me go and take a look. I would like to see if the desolate abyss can overturn the heavens. Hongyu said, "Brother Hua, I think it'll be better if we call a few more people." Huabuli shook his head. There's no need. If something really happened to them, whether it's Yu Meng or Gong Zhan, only one of them is in trouble. This means that the other party does not have the ability to kill Sea Expansion Realm cultivators continuously. Although I'm not one of the top 10 Sea Expansion Realm cultivators in the Chaotic Ocean, Yu Meng and Gong Zhan are no match for me. Let's go and take a look. Hongyu cursed in his heart. What a stubborn bastard. You're strong enough, but I'm not strong enough. Don't drag me with you if you dare. Unfortunately, the Wild Corpse Heaven was just a foreign immortal palace. Hongyu didn't dare to offend Huabuli, so he could only go with him. On the other side, Gong Zhan was fleeing, fearing that Han Fei would catch up with him. He fully activated the 5 elements escape technique, wishing that he could have a new pair of wings. Gong Zhan thought to himself, Yu Meng has fallen. The weather will definitely shake the Chaotic Ocean in a very short time. When I go back, I'll immediately tell the Grand Pure and the Wuji what happened. Now Han Fei was no longer someone that 2 kings could easily deal with. At the periphery of the Savage Abyss, after Han Fei broke the array 10 years ago, people had been stationed here all year round. The venerables of the major immortal palaces were cultivating while paying attention to the situation in the Savage Abyss. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the heavenly way, and people from the major forces were in an uproar. Hurry up, retreat to the route. A king has fallen. Retreat, venerables and kings were 2 different concepts after all. Wang Yun had appeared without any warning. Who would dare to be negligent in this world? At the moment when these people hurriedly fled to the route, in a certain route, they saw a big ship quietly floating on the sea. A total of 49 people appeared with the big ship. Luo Xiaobai asked, "Are we out?" Zhang Xuanyu exclaimed, "Wow, the spiritual energy here is so rich, and the energy is more violent. This place is somewhat similar to the cage, but it's milder than the cage. However, it's a little gentler than the cage. It's simply too suitable for cultivation." Hu Lurinquang opened his mouth and took a long breath of relief. I'm sure that this is the Chaotic Azure Sea. At this moment, Yi Shiyan and the others curiously crouched around the big ship. The Worm King glanced at the skull flag on the hull, thinking about something. Chu Linyuan and Mu Qingchuan couldn't hide their excitement. It turns out that this is the Chaotic Ocean. At this time, Han Fei shouted, "Don't be surprised. You have indeed left the cage we lived in. At this moment, we are on a different route. You just need to remember that in the Chaotic Ocean, once you leave the route, it is extremely easy to get lost. Therefore, even if you fight, you must not deviate too far from the route. Today is the first day we came out. Let me tell you the basic situation of the Chaotic Ocean. First of all, our fleet is called the Avengers." Han Fei's random explanation, such as the 36 mysterious heavens, the 100 demon clan, the sea humans, the mermaid royal family, and the martial emperor city, stunned them. Jiao Mengyue said, "Human king, then what should we do?" "First of all, don't call me human king, call me captain. Secondly, you just came out. What do you lack the most?" This time, Lu Rinquang immediately shouted, "We lack resources." Han Fei grinned. "Look, what should you do? You should grab resources. Wait on this route and wait for resources to come to you." What Han Fei didn't know was that in order to give everyone this moment, he happened to miss Hu Biuli and Hong Yu.